By the time the sun is bright enough to show the river's shimmer, you are already walking the path that leads to the hives. The ground is packed earth, cool under your sandals in the early hour, still holding night moisture. To one side, a shallow channel carries Nile water into the fields. It is not a roaring thing, just a moving presence, a ribbon of life. Ahead, the apiary sits where you can manage it easily, close enough to water, close enough to the fields, close enough to the storehouse that honey can become inventory before the day grows hot. The hives are not boxes. They are long, horizontal tubes, stacked and sheltered, made of mud and clay, an arrangement described in ancient Egyptian evidence and repeatedly emphasized by researchers discussing Egyptian beekeeping. You pause in front of them the way a potter pauses before the kill, attentive, respectful, practical. The hives are alive. Not loud. Alive in a contained way, like a room full of breathing. You listen to the hum, because the hum tells you more than a title ever could. A strong hum means activity. A thin hum can mean heat, stress, disturbance, or a colony that has weakened. Today the hum is steady. Good. You are not alone in this work, even if much of it feels solitary. There is a hierarchy above you, an administrative structure that treats honey as a valuable product, something managed, counted, and distributed. Scholarship discusses documented titles like overseer of the beekeepers and other honey-related roles, implying organization rather than casual hobby. Your own identity is simple in practice. You keep colonies alive. You harvest without ruining them. You deliver honey and wax in the condition required. You do not decide where it goes. That is for stewards, scribes, and officials. But you know where it tends to go. Honey is expensive. It is not a daily sweet for everyone. Interviews and scholarship note honey's high value and controlled access, often linked to elite and institutional contexts. So your day is shaped by two pressures that rarely speak their names. Keep the bees productive. Keep the output accountable. Your tools would disappoint someone who expects spectacle. A small smoking vessel, simple, serviceable. A reed or a bundle of plant fibers that can hold ember and smoke. A cloth. A scraping tool. A basket. A jar. And clay, always clay. The smoking is not for drama. It is for calm. Beekeeping depictions and discussions repeatedly mention smoke as a recognizable practice in ancient Egyptian scenes. You keep the smoke gentle. Too much and you agitate. Too little and you rush. You are not trying to win against bees. You are trying to work with them. This is a profession built on controlled breathing. Controlled hands. Controlled pace. You kneel at the lowest row, where the clay is coolest. You put your ear close, not pressed, just near. Hum. Steady. You feel the vibration through air more than through stone. Then you check the ends, because these tube hives are worked from the ends. One end is the working side, the other the side you keep calmer. The hive opening is sealed and managed with mud plugs and coverings. In traditional descriptions of these systems, modern references describe the method of smoking one end to move bees and harvest from the other. You do not yank anything open. You loosen slowly. You let the hive adjust. A small curl of smoke goes in. The hum changes subtly. Not angry. Busy shifting. You wait. Because the difference between skill and rashness is waiting 10 seconds longer than your impulse wants to. Honey harvesting, in the best version of the job, is not a raid. It is a careful taking. The comb is removed. The bees are given time and space to regroup. The colony continues. Evidence and commentary on ancient Egyptian beekeeping scenes describe stages like collecting combs, pouring honey into vessels, and sealing for storage. You lift comb with a steadiness you learned the hard way. Too fast and it tears. Too slow and it drips where you cannot afford waste. The honey is thick, slow, golden in torchlight later, but right now it is simply heavy. It has weight. You can smell it, even through smoke, warm sweetness, wax, pollen, and the dusty breath of the clay itself. A drop falls. You watch it stretch. You do not rush it. In this job, patience isn't virtue. It's technique. There is a kind of honey people speak of in careful tones, white honey, as if naming it too loudly would turn it ordinary. Not every source agrees on every detail, but historians discuss distinctions in honey types and quality in New Kingdom contexts. You do not need to preach it. You just live the reality. Some honey is clearer. Some darker. Some carries more plant taste, sharp, resinous, almost medicinal. The steward wants consistency. The steward wants the best jars separated from the rest. Because the best jars travel upward toward offices, temples, high tables, places where sweetness is a privilege. You label in the way your world labels, with marks, with placement, with the knowledge of which jar is which because you handled it yourself. Later, scribes make it official. But the first sorting happens in your hands. Back at the work surface, you strain. Not for modern perfection. For practical cleanliness. Bits of wax. Dust. A stray bee. You remove what you can so the jar does not become a problem later. Ancient descriptions commonly mention honey being poured into vessels and sealed. The clean jar is part of the storage logic. You let the honey settle, because honey is patient and expects you to be patient too. When it settles, it clarifies. It becomes less foam, more depth. And in the quiet of that waiting, the apiary returns to humming. Outside, bees continue working the flowers, the fields, the riverbanks. Your harvest is only a slice of their whole day. Honey is not uniform. This seems obvious once stated. But the recognition that different honeys have different qualities and that these qualities can be categorized, ranked, valued differently represents sophistication in production. You produce multiple grades of honey. Not deliberately creating variation, but recognizing variation that naturally occurs. Then processing each grade appropriately. Then delivering each grade to its appropriate destination. The highest grade is called virgin honey in later writings. You do not use this term. But you know the concept. It is the first honey that flows from comb without pressing. The purest. The clearest. The most valuable. This virgin honey comes from freshly harvested comb. Comb where honey is fully cured. Bees have capped the cells with wax, indicating proper moisture content. You cut sections of this comb carefully. You place them in a clean bowl. A wide clay bowl dedicated to this purpose. You carry this bowl into the sun. The Egyptian sun is not gentle. It is intense. Powerful. This intensity is useful now. You place the bowl where sun strikes directly. Where heat builds. The wax capping begins to soften almost immediately. Then to melt. Then to liquefy. The trapped honey beneath begins to warm. To thin. To flow. Honey flows slowly at room temperature. Viscous. Resistant to movement. But heated honey flows readily. Becomes almost liquid. Pours easily. As the sun heats the comb, honey begins seeping from beneath the melted caps. It pools at the bottom of the bowl. Gravity pulls it downward. It accumulates. Drop by drop at first. Then in small flows. Eventually in steady seepage. The wax melts completely. It floats. Honey is denser than melted wax. Wax rises to the surface. Forms a layer. Sometimes a perfect cap across the entire bowl surface. Sometimes broken islands of wax floating on honey. This separation is natural. Requires no technology. No complex tools. Just sun. Just understanding that wax floats and honey sinks. Just patience to let it happen. You wait. Hours pass. The separation continues. More honey seeps from the comb. More wax rises. The honey layer deepens. The wax layer thickens. Eventually, the process completes. All extractable honey has drained from the comb. All wax has risen. Now you must separate them physically. Decanting. This requires specific vessels. Clay jars with spouts. Not spouts at the rim like normal jars. Spouts partway down the side. Near the bottom. Like vessels used for fat separation when cooking. You carefully transfer the bowl contents into such a jar. Honey and wax together. The wax still floats on top. The honey still sits below. You let it settle. Let gravity complete its work. Let any suspended particles drift to the bottom. Let clarity improve. Then you open the side spout. The spout is positioned below the wax layer but above any settled debris at the very bottom. From this position, relatively pure honey flows out. Below the wax. Above the sediment. You pour this honey into clean storage jars. Clay jars reserved for virgin honey. Sometimes these jars are marked. A seal. A symbol. An identifier that indicates contents are highest quality. This virgin honey is extraordinary. Clear when held to light. Sometimes golden. Sometimes darker depending on flower source. But always translucent. Always brilliant. Always free from debris or cloudiness. Virgin honey also has remarkable stability. It does not ferment. Bacteria cannot grow in it. It lasts indefinitely. Jars sealed properly remain edible for years. Decades. Perhaps longer. This stability made honey valuable long before anyone understood why it resists spoilage. Virgin honey is not for common use. It goes to specific destinations. Temples for offerings to gods. Royal households for pharaoh and highest officials. Medical uses requiring purity. Occasions where quality matters more than quantity. You do not decide these allocations. Administrative oversight decides. But you know where virgin honey goes. You know it is counted carefully. Weighed. Recorded. Valued at highest rate in whatever system of exchange applies. You produce less virgin honey than other grades. Perhaps 1 part virgin to 4 parts other grades. The ratio varies by season, by flower source, by harvesting timing. But virgin honey is always minority portion of total production. The remaining comb after virgin honey has drained still contains honey. Trapped in wax structure. Absorbed into cell walls. Not flowing freely but present. Valuable. Extractable through additional processing. This additional processing is pressing. You take the drained comb. You crush it. Break down the wax structure mechanically. Use your hands. Use pressing tools. Use whatever force is necessary to rupture the remaining cells. To release the trapped honey. This crushing creates a mixture. Honey. Wax. Small wax particles. Possibly brood remnants if you harvested too aggressively. All combined. Much less pure than virgin honey. But still valuable. Still usable. You place this mixture in a cloth bag. Woven cloth. Tightly woven to contain wax pieces but loose enough to allow honey flow. You suspend this bag. Tie it to a frame or pole. Position a vessel beneath it. Let gravity work again. Honey drains slowly through the cloth. Filtered by weave. Some wax passes through. Fine particles. But most wax is retained in the bag. The draining takes many hours. Sometimes overnight. Gravity cannot be rushed. The honey that drips through is pressed honey. Second grade. Lighter in color than virgin honey, some wax contamination. Lighter in flavor, more processing. Lighter in clarity, suspended particles remain. But still good honey. Still useful honey. Still valuable honey. Pressed honey goes to different destinations than virgin honey. Temple storage for worker rations. Administrative distribution to laborers who receive honey as part of payment. Markets where people with modest means can purchase honey. Medical uses where purity is less critical. Pressed honey is also stable. Perhaps less stable than virgin honey. Moisture content may be slightly higher, wax particles may harbor microorganisms but still stable enough for normal storage and use. Most honey consumed by most people is pressed honey. Virgin honey is exceptional. Pressed honey is typical. The ratio of virgin to pressed honey depends on harvesting timing. If you harvest when comb is barely capped, less honey is fully cured. Less virgin honey results. More pressing is required. Total yield may be higher but quality distribution shifts toward pressed grade. If you wait until comb is heavily capped, well cured, more virgin honey results. Less pressing needed. Quality distribution shifts upward. But waiting risks theft, pests, or the colony consuming stored honey themselves. Timing is perpetual balance. After pressing, the remaining material in the cloth bag is largely wax. Honey-stained wax. Possibly some pollen. Possibly small brood remnants. This material is not waste. Wax is valuable. Different uses than honey but equally important. You squeeze the remaining material. Extract what honey still clings to it. This third pressing honey is lowest grade. Dark. Cloudy. Containing significant wax particles. Sometimes slightly fermented if moisture was high. This is not stored long. It is used quickly. Sometimes fed back to bees during scarce periods. Sometimes used in brewing. Sometimes incorporated into food preservation where clarity does not matter. The extracted wax is melted down. Filtered. Purified. Reformed into blocks. These wax blocks are valuable commodities. Used in cosmetics. In candles. In sealing documents. In mummification practices. In medicinal preparations. In waterproofing. In countless applications beyond honey. So a single harvest produces multiple products. Virgin honey. Pressed honey. Low-grade honey. Purified wax. Each with different value. Each with different destination. Each requiring different handling. The grading system is not arbitrary. It reflects real quality differences. Virgin honey truly is purer, more stable, more valuable. Pressed honey truly is acceptable but lower quality. The administrative system that accepts these deliveries knows the differences. Inspects carefully. Rejects honey that is mislabeled or poor quality. You have seen honey rejected. A keeper brings jars labeled as virgin honey. Inspector examines it. Sees cloudiness. Sees suspended particles. Sees evidence of pressing rather than drainage. Rejects the batch. Requires regrading to pressed category. Perhaps penalizes the keeper for attempted deception. This quality control maintains system integrity. Prevents inferior honey from reaching highest value destinations. Protects reputation of Egyptian honey in international trade. Ensures temples receive appropriate quality for offerings. The inspection may seem harsh, but it serves necessary function. You maintain honesty in grading. Label accurately. Deliver what you claim to deliver. This honesty builds trust. Trust brings future allocations. Future resources. Future support. Short-term gains from mislabeling create long-term losses from damaged reputation. The jars themselves indicate grade sometimes. Highest quality virgin honey goes in finest jars. Smooth surfaces. Careful construction. Sometimes sealed with additional wax around a stopper to ensure absolute purity. These jars may be marked with seals or symbols indicating contents. Pressed honey goes in standard jars. Still well made. Still sealed properly. But less elaborate. More utilitarian. Marked differently or not marked at all. Low-grade honey goes in rough jars. Sometimes reused jars. Sometimes jars with minor defects that would not be acceptable for higher grades. The jar quality signals content quality to anyone familiar with the system. The sealing of jars is critical for all grades. Honey absorbs moisture from air. If sealed improperly, moisture content rises. Fermentation becomes possible. Spoilage occurs. Properly sealed, honey lasts indefinitely. Improperly sealed, it fails within months or weeks. You seal with wax. Melted beeswax poured around the jar stopper, creating airtight barrier. Sometimes you add resin to the wax for extra adhesion. The seal must be complete. Must withstand transport. Must prevent moisture entry during storage. The administrative system tracks honey by weight, not by jar count. Jars vary in size. Weight is objective measurement. You deliver honey. It is weighed. The weight is recorded. You are credited with that weight. Later deliveries add to your total. Your standing depends on cumulative weight delivered relative to expectations. This weight-based accounting is practical but requires precision. Scales must be accurate. Must be calibrated against official standards. Must be operated consistently. The temple scales are official. Your scales at home are estimates. The official weight is what matters. You sometimes test your home scales against temple scales. Bring a jar. Weigh it at home. Bring it to temple. Weigh it officially. Compare. Adjust your home scale if discrepancy exists. This calibration prevents surprises. Prevents disputes. Keeps your estimates aligned with official measurements. The honey production cycle follows the flower cycle, which follows the Nile cycle, which follows the sun cycle, which follows time itself. Predictable. Reliable. Year after year. But within this reliable pattern, variation exists. Some years produce more honey than others. Some flower years are exceptional. Some are modest. Some are failures. You cannot predict accurately. You can only respond. Harvest when harvest is possible. Accept that yields vary. Plan for variation rather than consistency. The grading system accommodates this variation somewhat. In poor years, virgin honey may be scarcer. More pressing may be necessary. But the quality standards remain. Virgin honey must still meet virgin standards even if quantity is low. You cannot lower quality to maintain quantity. Quality is definition. Quantity is result. In exceptional years, virgin honey may be abundant. You may produce more than usual proportion. This pleases administrative oversight. Indicates favorable conditions. Reflects well on your management. May result in additional resources allocated to your work. Good years create opportunities. You try to maximize them. The daily work of extraction is repetitive. Place comb in sun. Wait for drainage. Decant. Seal in jars. Press remaining comb. Wait for drainage. Decant. Seal in jars. Process wax. Clean vessels. Begin again with next batch. Repetitive but not mindless. Each batch requires attention. Each drainage requires judgment about when separation is complete. Each decanting requires care to avoid contamination. Each sealing requires thoroughness to ensure preservation. You develop rhythm in this work. Efficiency without rushing. Thoroughness without obsessing. The rhythm comes from practice. From thousands of repetitions. From knowing what to watch for. From making small corrections before they become large problems. Other keepers sometimes ask about your technique. You explain the basics. Sun drainage. Spout vessels. Weight-based accounting. But the details, the timing judgments, the quality assessments, the efficient movements, these come from experience. Cannot be fully taught. Must be developed through doing. You sometimes watch other keepers work. See their techniques. Sometimes learn something useful. Sometimes see mistakes you can avoid. Sometimes confirm your own approaches are sound. The observation is valuable even when you do not change your own practice. The grading system serves everyone involved. Producers know what is expected. Administrators receive predictable quality. End users receive appropriate honey for their purposes. Gods receive finest offerings. Workers receive adequate rations. Markets receive sellable products. The system functions because the grading is real, enforced, understood. Virgin honey continues draining in the sun. Pressed honey continues dripping through cloth. Wax continues separating. Jars continue being sealed. The work continues. Drain, decant, seal. Drain, decant, seal. The rhythm that transforms comb into commodity. The rhythm that creates value from bees' work. The rhythm that sustains your role in the administrative system. The rhythm older than you. The rhythm that will continue after you. The rhythm that is honey extraction. The sun climbs higher. The separation continues. The grades emerge. The jars fill. The cycle progresses. When people imagine this job, they imagine sweetness. They forget wax. Wax is not a leftover. Wax is material. A substance that can be shaped. A substance that can seal. A substance that matters in an economy that loves clay, cord, and closure. Scholarly discussions of bee products in the ancient Near East mention wax alongside honey for practical and technical uses. Medical literature also highlights bees and their products in Egyptian contexts. You scrape wax carefully, because wax carries value too. A good day is not just measured in honey volume. It is measured in how little is wasted. How much remains usable. How cleanly the output can be handed to the next person in the chain. The hives you use were not purchased. They were built. By you. Or by craftspeople who understand the specific requirements. Or by previous keepers whose work you inherited and maintain. Building a hive is not complex. But it requires precision. A poorly built hive creates problems that compound over time. Better to build well initially than to repair constantly later. The basic form is a horizontal tube. Not vertical boxes like some foreign practices use. Horizontal tubes have advantages in this climate. Heat management. Access. Transport stacking. The form is ancient. Proven. Reliable. The length is consistent. Roughly 1.5 arm lengths. Perhaps slightly longer for large colonies. Perhaps slightly shorter for starter hives. But generally standardized. This standardization allows stacking. Allows replacement. Allows hives to be interchangeable in storage walls. The diameter is as thick as your torso. Large enough that a colony can build substantial comb. Not so large that the hive becomes unmanageably heavy. The diameter balances bee space against human handling capacity. The construction begins with a frame. Not a permanent frame. A temporary support structure used during building. You shape this frame from reeds. Bundled tightly. Formed into a cylinder. Tied at intervals to maintain shape. Around this reed frame, you wrap grasses. Dried grasses. Sometimes straw if available. These provide structure. Provide something for the mud to grip. Provide insulation once the mud hardens. The wrapping is methodical. You overlap each layer. You bind with cord as you work. You maintain even thickness. You check cylindrical shape constantly. Any irregularity now becomes permanent later. Once the grass layer is complete, you begin applying mud. Not just any mud. Nile mud mixed with clay. The ratio matters. Too much clay and the mixture cracks when drying. Too little clay and the mixture lacks strength. You know the right consistency through feel. Through years of mixing. Through watching how previous hives have held up. You add chopped reeds or straw to the mud mixture. This provides tensile strength. Prevents cracking. Acts like fibers in fabric. The mixture becomes cohesive. Moldable but not loose. Sticky but not liquid. You apply this mixture with your hands. Pressing it firmly against the grass layer. Working in sections. Building up thickness gradually. One layer. Let it firm slightly. Another layer. Continue until the wall reaches sufficient thickness. Perhaps the width of 3 fingers. Perhaps 4. The thickness balances weight against durability. Thicker walls are stronger but heavier. Thinner walls are lighter but more fragile. You adjust based on hive purpose. Transport hives might be slightly thinner. Permanent apiary hives might be thicker. As you build up the mud layers, you smooth the outer surface. Your hands work the mud. Push out air bubbles. Create even texture. The surface does not need to be perfect. But it should be consistent. Should allow water to run off rather than pooling in depressions. The inner surface against the reed frame remains rougher. This rough texture helps bees attach comb. Provides grip. Prevents comb from pulling away from walls under its own weight. Once the body is complete, you must create the openings. Each end needs a closure. One end will be the entrance small opening for bees. Other end will be the harvest access larger opening you can reach through. You form the entrance end while mud is still workable. You create a wooden plug. Carved from acacia or palm. Circular. Fitting snugly into the tube. With a small notch or hole just large enough for bees to pass through 1 or 2 at a time. This restricted entrance serves multiple functions. Limits drafts that could chill brood. Prevents mice or lizards from entering. Makes hive defensible against robber bees from other colonies. Allows you to control access completely when needed. The harvest end receives a similar wooden plug. But larger. Flat. Sealing completely when in place. You can remove this plug to access honeycomb. Then replace it when done. The seal must be good. Must prevent moisture. Must prevent pests. Both plugs are secured with mud paste. Clay mixed with water. Pressed into gaps between wood and hive wall. This seals while allowing removal when necessary. When removal is needed, you chip away the dried clay seal. Remove plug. Then reseal after closing. Now comes drying. This cannot be rushed. The hive must dry thoroughly before use. Wet hive walls support mold growth. Attract ants. Collapse under stress. Patient drying several days in sun ensures durability. You turn the hive periodically during drying. Expose all surfaces to air and sun. Watch for cracks developing. Small cracks are acceptable. Large cracks require patching. You mix fresh mud. Fill cracks. Allow additional drying time. Once fully dry, you remove the internal reed frame. You reach through the harvest opening. Pull out the reed bundle. Sometimes the reeds are stuck. Sometimes mud has penetrated the grass layer. You work carefully. Extract what you can. Leave what is too embedded. The remaining organic material does not harm the colony. The result is a hollow tube. Clay exterior. Rough interior. Wooden plugs at both ends. Weighing perhaps as much as a large jar when empty. Much more when full of bees, comb, honey, brood. This hive will last for years if maintained. If kept dry when stored. If repaired promptly when cracks develop. Some hives you inherited from your father are still productive. 20 years old. Perhaps more. Patched multiple times. But functional. You do not build hives constantly. You build when you need new capacity. When old hives deteriorate beyond repair. When you expand operations, perhaps you build 5 new hives in a good year. Perhaps none in a lean year. The bees that occupy these hives are Egyptian honeybees, not European bees. Distinct subspecies. Apis mellifera lamarckii in technical terms you do not use, but you know their characteristics intimately. Egyptian bees are smaller than foreign bees. Noticeably smaller. A forager returning to the hive fits easily through the narrow entrance. Build smaller comb cells. Create more compact brood patterns. This size difference is apparent if you ever see European bees for comparison. You have not. But traders mention it. Egyptian bees are more aggressive, more likely to sting when disturbed, more defensive of their colony. This aggression serves them, protects against the numerous predators in this environment. Lizards, birds, beetles, mice, wasps, ants. Bees that cannot defend aggressively do not survive long here. You have adapted to this aggression. You move slowly around hives. You use smoke generously. You accept that stings will happen. They happen less frequently now than when you were learning. But they still happen. Vigilance reduces frequency, does not eliminate it. Egyptian bees build smaller colonies than European bees. Perhaps 20,000 individuals at peak. Perhaps 30,000 in an exceptionally productive colony. Smaller than the 40 or 50,000 reported from northern lands. But appropriate for this climate. For available forage. For sustainable management. These smaller colonies have advantages. They require less storage space in hives. They consume less honey during sparse periods. They are more manageable during transport. They swarm less frequently than very large colonies. The size suits the environment and the practice. Egyptian bees are also more prone to absconding. If conditions become unfavorable, heat too intense, forage too scarce, disturbance too frequent, the entire colony may leave. You find the hive empty. No bees. Some remaining comb. The colony has relocated to what they perceive as a better location. This absconding is frustrating. Represents lost production. Lost investment in building up the colony. But it also represents bee wisdom. Bees know when a location cannot sustain them. Sometimes you recognize afterward that the site truly was problematic. Harsh lesson. Expensive. But informative. You try to prevent absconding through attentive management. Adequate shade. Proximity to water. Steady forage availability. Minimal disturbance. Good ventilation. When these conditions exist, absconding is rare. When conditions are poor, absconding becomes likely. Water is particularly critical in this climate. Bees need water daily. For cooling the hive. For diluting honey to feed brood. For their own consumption. They cannot fly long distances for water. If water source is too far, the colony struggles. May abscond. You site apiaries near water intentionally. Canal. Irrigation channel. River. Pond. Within bee flight range. You also provide water containers near hives sometimes. Clay dishes filled regularly. With floating material so bees can drink without drowning. This supplementation helps during dry periods. The hot climate creates specific challenges. Midday temperatures can stress colonies severely. Bees cluster at the entrance. Fan vigorously. Work to cool the interior. You hear this fanning. Recognize the stress. Respond by providing additional shade. By ensuring water access. By temporarily blocking direct sun on hive walls. Overheating can kill brood. Can cause comb collapse. Can make bees abandon the hive in desperation. Temperature management is constant awareness. Constant small adjustments. Constant monitoring of colony stress signals. The same heat that stresses bees also benefits honey production. Evaporation happens quickly. Nectar becomes honey faster than in cooler climates. This rapid curing means faster harvest turnover. Means higher productivity during bloom periods. The climate is challenging but also advantageous. Egyptian bees are also adapted to the specific flora here. They work chamomile enthusiastically. They navigate the Nile Delta's wetland flowers expertly. They handle the particular chemistry of local nectars well. Bees imported from other regions might struggle with these plants. Native bees thrive on them. This floral adaptation means you do not need to teach bees which flowers to work. They already know. Generations of selection have encoded preferences. You simply provide hives. The bees handle the rest. Efficient. Reliable. Requiring only that you site them where forage exists. Colony reproduction happens through swarming. When a colony becomes strong enough, the queen and perhaps half the workers leave. They cluster temporarily. Then relocate to establish a new colony. The original hive raises a new queen from remaining brood. Eventually returns to full strength. Swarming is both opportunity and challenge. It is natural colony multiplication. Free bees if you can capture the swarm. But it also halves the production of the original hive temporarily. Represents short-term loss for long-term gain. You manage swarming by catching swarms when possible. You keep empty hives ready. When you see a swarm cluster, you position an empty hive nearby. Sometimes the swarm accepts it. Sometimes they reject it and continue to their chosen location. Success rate is modest but worthwhile. Caught swarms become productive colonies without requiring purchase or extensive build-up. You also prevent swarming sometimes. If you notice queen cells developing special larger cells where new queens are raised, you can remove them. This disrupts the swarming process. Delays it. Gives you time to harvest before the colony divides. Not natural, but sometimes necessary for production targets. The internal structure of colonies is consistent. Brood in center of comb developing eggs, larvae, pupae requiring warmth. Honey stored in upper outer areas, temperature fluctuations matter less. Pollen stored near brood, immediate food source for nurse bees feeding larvae. You see this organization when you harvest. You avoid removing brood comb. Take only honeycomb from outer areas. Leave colony structure intact. This selective harvest allows colony to recover quickly. To continue production rather than rebuilding entirely. Egyptian bees use propolis sparingly. This resinous substance collected from plants is used to seal gaps, reinforce comb attachments, protect against disease. European bees apparently use propolis heavily. Egyptian bees less so. Perhaps because resin sources are less abundant here. Perhaps because the climate requires less sealing. This limited propolis use means Egyptian hives are easier to open. Less stuck together. Easier to manipulate during management. Advantage for the beekeeper. Possible disadvantage for the colony but apparently tolerable given successful adaptation. The seasonal cycle of colonies follows the Nile. When flood arrives and flowers bloom, colonies expand rapidly. When dry season reduces forage, colonies contract. This expansion and contraction is natural. Expected. You plan harvests around peak expansion. Do not harvest during contraction phases. Allow colonies to maintain reserves. Disease affects colonies occasionally. You see symptoms. Brood that dies in cells. Foul odor from infected hives. Bees dragging dead larvae out. Colony weakness. Slow decline. You do not understand disease mechanisms. You simply recognize symptoms through experience. Response to disease is limited. Sometimes you remove affected comb. Sometimes you combine weak colonies with strong ones. Sometimes you destroy a badly infected hive entirely, burn it to prevent spread. Harsh but sometimes necessary. You learn which approaches work through trial. through watching outcomes over multiple seasons. Parasites also present challenges. Small beetles. Wax moths. These invade weak colonies. Lay eggs in comb. Their larvae consume wax and honey. Destroy comb structure. A strong colony defends against these pests. A weak colony becomes overwhelmed. Collapses. You maintain colony strength as primary defense. Strong colonies rarely succumb to pests. Weak colonies almost always do. So you focus on strength. On adequate forage. On minimal stress. On good genetic stock. Strength prevents most problems before they develop. Genetic stock matters, but you manage it imperfectly. You know that some queens produce stronger colonies than others. You try to propagate from strong colonies. But you cannot control mating. Queens mate in flight. With multiple drones. You cannot predict or direct which drones. So genetic management is approximate. Hopeful rather than precise. Over years, you have noticed patterns. Colonies descended from certain strong hives tend to perform better. You try to catch swarms from these lineages. Try to allow them to expand preferentially. Try to remove poor-performing colonies from the breeding population. Slow. Imprecise. But somewhat effective. The relationship between beekeeper and bees is not affectionate. It is professional. Respectful. Pragmatic. You need what bees produce. Bees tolerate your management if done carefully. Neither party is sentimental about the arrangement. But there is familiarity. You know these bees. Their sounds. Their behaviors. Their responses to disturbance. Their seasonal patterns. This knowledge accumulates through thousands of hours working near them. Listening to them. Watching them. Responding to their signals. You can hear when a colony is queenless. The sound changes. Becomes disorganized. Anxious. You investigate. Confirm. Provide a new queen if possible. Or combine the colony with another. The sound guided you to the problem before visual inspection revealed it. You can see when forage is abundant. Pollen loads on returning foragers. Heavy abdomens on bees entering hives. Increased activity. Purposeful flight patterns. These signals tell you when harvest opportunities are approaching. You can smell when fermentation begins in uncapped honey. Sweet. Slightly alcoholic. Warning that moisture content is too high. That harvest was premature. That spoilage may develop. You learn to wait longer. To test cap coverage more carefully. To avoid this problem. This accumulated knowledge, auditory, visual, olfactory, makes you effective. Makes your judgment reliable. Makes your decisions generally correct. Not because you understand bee biology comprehensively. But because you recognize patterns. Respond appropriately. Learn from mistakes. The hive you built months ago now holds a thriving colony. The clay walls support honey-laden comb. The wooden plugs seal securely. The bees move purposefully through the small entrance. The construction has become infrastructure. The infrastructure supports production. The production sustains your work. Build, dry, populate. Build, dry, populate. The cycle that creates capacity. The cycle that transforms mud and grass into tools for honey production. The cycle older than memory. The cycle continuing forward. The hum is steady. The construction is solid. The bees are working. The season progresses. The jars matter. A cracked jar is disaster. A badly sealed jar is a quiet thief, it steals by time, by mold, by ants. So the storage step is treated with respect. Some sources describe honey being sealed in earthen jars. The logic is consistent. Storage is part of the craft, not an afterthought. You wipe the rim. You watch for stray moisture. You prepare the sealing clay because clay is the simplest way to make a container honest. The clay cap is pressed, smoothed, stamped or marked by whatever the institution requires. And yes, later, someone may track these jars as rations or allocations, because honey's distribution is known to have been managed and not universal. Now comes a shift in the day. From craft to movement. From bees to people. You carry jars careful, steady, close to the body. You do not swing them. You do not show off. You step into the cooler shadow of the storehouse. Inside, it smells different: dry reeds, dust, old clay, stored grain, and the faint tang of past spills. This is where your work becomes official. Here, a steward checks. A clerk notes. A jar is placed in the correct zone. And honey becomes part of a larger machine: temple supplies, elite rations, offerings, and controlled distribution described by researchers and interviews on Egyptian beekeeping's social value. You don't need to see the end of the chain to understand it. You only need to see how carefully everyone treats the jar. Careful hands are evidence. They tell you what the object means. And today, the jar means more than sweetness. It means order. It means a quiet kind of wealth that can be poured in a thin line from a reed, drop by drop, without anyone raising their voice. Honey heals. This is not superstition. This is observed fact accumulated over generations of treating wounds, treating burns, treating ailments that respond to honey application. You do not understand why honey heals. You lack medical training. Lack theoretical framework. But you observe results. Honey placed on wound prevents festering, reduces inflammation, accelerates healing. These outcomes are consistent enough to be reliable. Medical practitioners request honey specifically for healing purposes. Not just any honey. They prefer virgin honey. Purest grade. Highest quality. They believe or know through experience that purity matters. That contaminated honey may harm rather than help. That medical applications require exceptional quality. You deliver honey for medical use with particular care. Ensure purity. Ensure cleanliness during handling. Ensure sealing prevents any degradation. Medical honey must be flawless. Lives may depend on its quality. This responsibility creates pressure. Creates attentiveness. Creates discipline that improves all your work. The mechanism of honey's healing properties will not be understood for thousands of years. But the properties exist regardless of understanding. Honey is hygroscopic, draws moisture from environment. This property helps clean wounds. Helps prevent bacterial growth. Bacteria require moisture. Honey removes moisture. Bacteria struggle to survive. Honey is also acidic. pH approximately 3.5 to 4.5. Most bacteria prefer neutral pH. Honey's acidity creates hostile environment. Limits bacterial proliferation. Allows body's own healing processes to work without fighting massive infections simultaneously. Honey contains various compounds: hydrogen peroxide in small amounts, various phytochemicals from flowers that have antimicrobial effects. Not dramatic effects, but sufficient effects. Combined with hygroscopic and acidic properties, honey creates environment where wounds heal better than if left untreated or treated with many other available substances. But you know none of this chemistry or physiology. You simply know, honey works. Medical practitioners know this too. They request honey. Apply it to wounds. Apply it to burns. Sometimes mix it with other substances, oils, resins, herbs to create compounds for various ailments. Honey is component of many medical treatments. Burns respond particularly well to honey treatment. Egypt is hot climate. Sun is intense. Fires are necessary for cooking and many crafts. Burns happen frequently. Honey applied to burn soothes pain somewhat. Prevents infection reliably. Accelerates healing noticeably. These benefits make honey valued burn treatment. You have used honey on your own burns occasionally. Small burns from lamp oil. From cooking accidents. From handling hot materials. The honey application is simple. Clean the burn. Apply honey generously. Cover with cloth if practical. Reapply when honey absorbs or is disrupted. Continue until healing progresses adequately. The relief is not immediate or dramatic. But over days, the burn heals cleaner than untreated burns. Less discharge. Less inflammation. Less risk of serious infection. These outcomes justify the honey use. Justify the cost. Justify foregoing that honey for other uses. Honey is also taken internally for various ailments. Coughs. Sore throats. Digestive complaints. Whether honey truly helps these conditions or whether improvement is coincidental, you cannot say definitively. But people report relief. Request honey for these purposes. You provide it when able. Internal honey use is simpler than wound treatment. Just consume honey. Swallow it. Let it coat throat. Let digestive system process it. No complex preparation. No precise application technique. Simplicity encourages use. Makes honey accessible remedy for common complaints. Beeswax also has medical applications distinct from honey. Mixed with oils, wax creates salves. Ointments. Preparations for skin conditions. For joint pain. For various ailments where topical application seems helpful. The wax provides structure to these preparations. Holds oils in stable form. Makes application convenient. You do not prepare medical compounds yourself. You provide raw honey and wax. Medical practitioners or patients create preparations according to their knowledge. Your role is ingredient supply. Their role is formulation and application. Beyond medicine, honey and wax serve cosmetic purposes. Wealthy people use both in beauty preparations. Skin treatments. Hair treatments. Complexion enhancement. These uses are luxury. Not necessity. But luxury creates demand. Demand creates market. Market creates opportunity for honey sales beyond food and medicine. Cosmetic honey is usually lower grade than medical honey. Not because quality matters less. But because appearance and texture matter more than absolute purity. Slightly darker honey. Slightly more processed honey. These work fine for cosmetic applications where they will be mixed with other ingredients anyway. Beeswax in cosmetics provides consistency. Allows creation of balms, salves, creams that maintain shape at body temperature. Allows controlled release of other ingredients mixed with wax. Makes cosmetic preparations portable and convenient. These properties make beeswax valuable cosmetic ingredient. You understand that wealthy households purchase substantial beeswax for cosmetic purposes. More than they purchase for any other single use. Cosmetics market is significant. Is reliable. Is willing to pay premium prices for quality wax. This market supports honey production indirectly. Provides additional revenue from wax that remains after honey extraction. Honey and wax also participate in broader trade networks. Egyptian honey is exported. Valued in other regions. Commands higher prices than local honey in markets where Egyptian products carry prestige. This export market you do not participate in directly. But it affects overall demand. Affects prices. Affects administrative interest in maintaining production. The export happens through merchants. Professional traders. People who move goods between regions. Between nations. Who understand markets. Who know where Egyptian honey fetches best prices. Who arrange transport. Who manage risks. Who profit from differences between purchase prices in Egypt and sale prices elsewhere. These merchants occasionally visit Apiarist. Not to purchase directly, they work through administrative intermediaries. but to understand supply, to assess quality, to establish relationships that might matter if unusual opportunities arise. You treat these visits as you treat administrative visits. Professional, informative, creating favorable impressions without committing to anything beyond normal channels. The international reputation of Egyptian honey reflects centuries of production, reflects consistent quality, reflects administrative systems that maintain standards, reflects geographic advantages: Nile Delta flora, favorable climate, established practices. The reputation is collective asset. Benefits all Egyptian beekeepers. Creates premium pricing that individual keepers could not command alone. You benefit from this reputation without contributing to it consciously. You maintain quality because administrative system requires it. Because personal pride requires it. Because established practices require it. The accumulated effect of many beekeepers maintaining quality over many generations creates the reputation. You are one small part of large pattern. Sometimes foreign visitors see Egyptian beekeeping. Express interest. Ask questions. You answer when able. Describe practices. Demonstrate techniques if visitors are genuinely curious rather than merely polite. These interactions are rare but memorable. Remind you that your local work connects to wider world. That honey you produce may travel far beyond your direct knowledge. The trading networks are complex. Honey moves through multiple hands. From beekeeper to overseer. From overseer to central storage. From storage to distributors. From distributors to merchants. From merchants to foreign traders. From foreign traders to distant markets. Each transfer involves negotiation. Involves pricing. Involves judgment about quality and quantity. You occupy the beginning of this chain. You produce. You deliver. What happens after is beyond your control. Beyond your knowledge. You sometimes wonder where your honey ends up. Whether it goes to temples. To royal households. To foreign lands. To medical practitioners. To wealthy cosmetics users. To common workers as rations. Probably all of these destinations. Different grades to different places. Different batches to different purposes. This widespread distribution makes honey production important beyond individual benefit. Makes it contribute to collective welfare. To religious practices. To medical care. To nutrition. To trade balance. To international reputation. To economic vitality. Your individual work participates in all these collective functions. Not dramatically. Not visibly. But genuinely. Wild honey also exists in Egypt. Some people harvest wild honey from natural hives in wadis, cliffs, abandoned structures. This wild harvest is separate from domesticated beekeeping. Sometimes competes with domestic honey. Sometimes complements it. Sometimes coexists without significant interaction. Wild honey hunters face different challenges than domestic beekeepers. They must find hives. Must access them sometimes in dangerous locations. Must harvest quickly before bees recover from initial smoke and become aggressively defensive. Must accept whatever honey is available. Cannot manage colonies or optimize production. The yield from wild honey hunting is unpredictable. Some hunters do well. Others find little. Weather affects wild colonies dramatically. Drought years reduce wild production substantially. Wet years improve it. Domestic beekeeping provides more stable production. More predictable output. More reliable supply for administrative needs. Some administrative oversight includes wild honey in overall supply planning. Allocates resources to protect known wild hive locations. Employs guards or archers to prevent unauthorized harvesting of particularly productive wild sites. This management is looser than domestic beekeeping oversight but exists nevertheless. You do not harvest wild honey yourself. Your domestic hives require full attention. Provide adequate yield. Adding wild harvest would split focus. Would reduce time available for domestic management. Would potentially reduce overall productivity. Better to specialize. Let wild honey hunters specialize in their work. Let each person focus on what they do best. The medical use of honey creates ethical considerations sometimes. Should medicinal honey be diverted to other uses when medical need is pressing? Should beekeepers maintain reserves for medical emergencies even when other uses are more profitable? You do not make these decisions. Administrative oversight makes them. But you comply with allocations. Provide medical honey when requested even if economic incentive favors other uses. This compliance reflects social contract. You participate in system that provides security, structure, resources. System sometimes requires prioritizing collective needs over individual profit. You accept this. Consider it reasonable. Consider it necessary for system to function. Without such prioritization, system would degrade. Everyone would pursue maximum individual gain. Collective functions would fail. Long term, everyone loses when systems fail. So you provide medical honey when directed. Provide honey for temple offerings when directed. Provide honey for royal households when directed. Accept that individual optimization must sometimes yield to collective requirements. This acceptance is not resentful. Not reluctant. Just pragmatic recognition of reality. The intersection of trade, medicine, cosmetics, and food creates multiple markets for honey. This diversification is advantageous. If food market weakens, medical market may remain strong. If medical demand drops, cosmetic demand may rise. Trade opportunities vary, but some markets usually exist. Diversification creates stability. Reduces risk. Protects producers from single market collapse. You do not manage market diversification directly, but you benefit from it. Honey you produce finds buyers regardless of specific market conditions because multiple markets exist. Administrative system manages market allocation. Directs honey to best use given current demands. You produce. System allocates. Arrangement works adequately. The cultural value of honey extends beyond practical uses. Honey represents abundance. Represents divine favor. Represents prosperity. These symbolic meanings matter in society where symbols shape understanding. Where gifts carry messages beyond material value. Where offerings express relationships between humans and powers beyond human control. You participate in this symbolic economy whether you think about it consciously or not. Honey you produce becomes part of gift exchanges. Becomes part of religious offerings. Becomes part of status displays. Becomes part of relationships maintained through material exchange. Each jar of honey potentially carries symbolic weight beyond its practical utility. This symbolic dimension does not increase your direct compensation, but it increases overall honey value. Increases social importance of honey production. Increases recognition that beekeepers perform valuable function. These indirect benefits matter. Create respect for craft. Create favorable positioning within social hierarchy. Create opportunities that purely economic calculations might not generate. The work of producing honey for medical, cosmetic, trade, and symbolic purposes is identical to work of producing honey for food. Same hives. Same bees. Same extraction processes. Same quality standards. The difference is destination and significance, not production methodology. This uniformity simplifies work. You do not need different techniques for different markets. You produce good honey. System allocates to appropriate uses. Division of labor. Specialization of function. Efficient organization that allows both production and distribution to optimize without requiring producers to master all functions. You complete today's delivery. Honey for medical use. honey for cosmetics, honey for trade, honey for food, wax for multiple purposes. All produced through same careful work. All meeting same quality standards. All entering system that will allocate appropriately to serve collective needs while providing you sustainable livelihood. The exchange is simple. You provide materials. System provides context for their use. Both parties benefit. Neither could achieve alone what they achieve cooperatively. This mutual dependency creates stability. Creates reason for system to support producers. Creates reason for producers to maintain quality even when easier to compromise. The pattern continues. Has continued for generations. Will continue for many more. Each beekeeper contributing. Each receiving support. Each part of larger pattern that produces honey for healing, honey for beauty, honey for commerce, honey for devotion, honey for sustenance. All from the work of collecting nectar. All from the wisdom of bees born from tears of Ra. All from human care and divine origin combined. Produce, deliver, apply. Produce, deliver, apply. The rhythm that transforms bee labor into human benefit. The rhythm that serves body and spirit simultaneously. The rhythm that connects hive, apiary, temple, palace, market, clinic, cosmetics workshop, export port, distant lands. All connected through honey. All supported through work. All participating in pattern larger than any individual understands completely but to which all contribute meaningfully. The hum continues. The work continues. The healing continues. The beauty continues. The trade continues. The cycle continues. One jar at a time. One application at a time. One healed wound at a time. The steady accumulation of small benefits that constitute civilization. That constitute care. That constitute the patient work of making life slightly better through attention to bees and honey and all that follows from their interaction. If anyone doubts your profession exists, you could point quietly to painted walls. In the tomb of Recamere, TT 100, a New Kingdom official, artists recorded beekeeping work, beekeepers handling horizontal cylindrical hives, collecting comb and pouring honey into jars, an image so clear that modern museums keep facsimiles of it. You don't need those walls in your workshop to do the work. But you like knowing they exist. Because a painted scene is not just art. It's a snapshot of routine. And routine is what you live inside. You do not work independently. You work within a system. A hierarchy. An administrative structure that existed before you began beekeeping. That will exist after you finish. That shapes your work whether you think about it consciously or not. This structure has official positions. Documented titles. Recorded responsibilities. Your title is beekeeper. Simple. Functional. But above you exist other titles. Overseer of the beekeepers. Head of the beekeepers of his lord. Sealer of the honey. These are not honorary positions. They are administrative roles. People occupy them. People who manage honey production at scale. Who coordinate multiple beekeepers. Who allocate resources. Who set expectations. Who inspect deliveries. Who maintain records. You report to an overseer. Not directly in the sense of daily supervision. But structurally. Your honey deliveries go through this overseer's accounting. Your requests for resources go through this overseer's approval. Your standing in the system depends partly on this overseer's assessments. The overseer manages perhaps 10 beekeepers. Perhaps 15. Perhaps more during peak production seasons. Each beekeeper has their own apiary. Their own hives. Their own practices. But all deliver to the same central storage. All operate under the same expectations. All are tracked in the same records. This centralized management serves multiple purposes. It consolidates production from scattered apiaries into one location. It standardizes quality control. It enables large-scale distribution that individual keepers could not manage. It creates predictable honey supply for administrative needs. The overseer's role includes inspection. When you deliver honey, the overseer examines it. Looks at color, clarity, consistency. Sometimes tastes a sample. Checks seal quality on jars. Verifies labels match contents. Compares your delivery to previous deliveries. This inspection is not hostile. It is quality assurance. The overseer wants your honey to be good. Good honey reflects well on his oversight. Poor honey reflects poorly. His interest and your interest align regarding quality. But he must verify. Cannot simply trust. The system requires verification. If inspection reveals problems, the overseer addresses them. Mislabeled grade gets corrected. Poor seals get rejected. You must improve sealing before next delivery. Contaminated honey gets refused. You must fix whatever contamination source exists. The feedback is direct, immediate, clear. You appreciate this directness. Ambiguous feedback would be worse. You would not know what to fix. Direct criticism is uncomfortable but useful. You can adjust, improve, demonstrate improvement in next delivery. The overseer also allocates resources. Perhaps you need new hives because you are expanding. You request them through the overseer. He assesses whether your production justifies expansion, whether resources are available, whether priorities favor your request over others' requests. If approved, you receive what you requested. Clay for hive construction. Wooden plugs. Perhaps labor assistance for heavy work. These allocations come from central stores. Managed collectively. Distributed based on need and performance. If denied, you adapt. Build hives using your own resources. Postpone expansion. Accept that other keepers' needs were more pressing. The allocation decisions are not personal. They are administrative. Based on system-wide considerations beyond individual preferences. Another administrative position is sealer of the honey. This title appears in old records. The role involves final sealing of honey jars for long-term storage or transport. Ensuring tamper evidence. Ensuring quality preservation. Ensuring official standards are met. The sealer examines sealed jars. Tests seal integrity. May add additional official sealing, a clay impression, a marking, something that indicates official approval. This additional sealing reassures recipients that honey meets standards. That it has passed inspection. That it can be trusted. You appreciate this official sealing. It protects you. If someone later claims the honey was poor quality, the official seal provides evidence it passed inspection at delivery. Transfers responsibility from you to the inspection system. You delivered honestly. Officials verified quality. Any subsequent problems are not your responsibility. The administrative system also uses honey for payments. Not currency exactly, but compensation. Workers receive honey as part of their rations. Officials receive honey as part of their benefits. Sometimes honey is traded for other goods in complex exchanges the administrative system tracks. This honey as payment system creates steady demand. Demand that exists regardless of market conditions. Regardless of whether people have money to purchase honey. The administrative system needs honey for its own operations. This structural demand stabilizes your work. Provides baseline requirements even during poor years. Different positions receive different honey quantities. High officials receive generous rations. Perhaps a jar per month. Perhaps more. Workers receive modest amounts. Perhaps equivalent to a few spoonfuls per day. Not enough to be primary sweetener but enough to be meaningful addition to diet. Laborers generally receive no honey. or very little. Honey is marker of status. Receiving honey means you have position. Means you are not at bottom of hierarchy. This status dimension makes honey valuable beyond its intrinsic properties. People desire honey partly for taste. Partly for status it signals. The administrative system maintains detailed records. Not records you see directly. But you know they exist. Scribes record deliveries. Record weights. Record grades. Record dates. These records accumulate over months and years. Create history of each beekeeper's production. This historical record matters. If you consistently deliver good honey in good quantities, your standing improves. If you consistently underdeliver or deliver poor quality, your standing declines. The records do not forget. Cannot be argued with. They are what they are. You maintain your own informal records. Not written, you are not trained scribe. But mental tracking. You remember approximately how much you delivered each month. Whether it met your own expectations. Whether it likely met administrative expectations. This mental tracking helps you anticipate feedback. Helps you adjust before problems become official concerns. The economic value of honey is substantial. Honey is expensive. More expensive than grain, beer, bread, basic foods. Comparable to fine oil, quality wine, luxury foods. A jar of good honey might trade for multiple jars of grain. Or substantial quantity of fish. Or days skilled labor. This high value means honey represents concentrated wealth. Your apiaries, when productive, generate significant value. Not enough to make you wealthy by elite standards. But enough to sustain your household comfortably. Enough to give you economic security that many people lack. The value also means honey is target for theft. Unguarded storage attracts attention. People know honey is valuable. Know it is non-perishable. Know it can be stolen and used or sold without obvious traceability. So you guard your stores. Keep them in your compound. Check them regularly. Accept that some loss may occur despite precautions. Official storage has guards. Permanent watch. Multiple people. Serious consequences for theft. This security reassures you. Once you deliver honey, it becomes official responsibility. Their problem to protect. You are compensated whether or not theft occurs later. Taxation sometimes involves honey. Not taxation as primary system. But honey as acceptable payment for taxes. If you owe grain taxes but have honey instead, honey may be accepted at conversion rate. This flexibility benefits you sometimes. Honey you can produce might be worth more than grain you would have to purchase to pay grain tax. The administrative system tracks honey from production through delivery through storage through final use. This tracking is comprehensive. Not perfect records can be lost, errors can occur but thorough enough to prevent major discrepancies. Everyone involved knows they are being tracked. This knowledge encourages honest dealing. International trade in honey exists though you do not participate directly. Egyptian honey is exported. Valued in other regions. Commands premium prices because of reputation for quality. This export market supports high domestic honey value. Creates sustained demand even when local consumption might be saturated. You sometimes wonder where exported honey goes. What peoples consume it. Whether they understand the work involved in production. But you do not wonder much. Your concern is production and delivery. What happens after delivery is beyond your scope. Beyond your control. Beyond your need to know. The administrative hierarchy includes temple officials. Honey goes to temples for multiple purposes. Offerings to gods. Rations for priests. Trade goods for acquiring other temple needs. Medical supplies for healing practices. This temple demand is substantial. Consistent. Valuable for beekeepers because temples are reliable customers. They need honey regardless of broader economic conditions. Your relationship with temple representatives is professional. They inspect your honey. They accept or reject deliveries. They pay not in currency always, but in allocation of resources, in future opportunities, in favorable positioning within the system. You provide what they need. They provide what you need. The exchange is practical rather than personal. The hierarchy also includes royal household connections. Pharaoh receives finest honey. This is not symbolic. This is actual practice. Virgin honey, carefully selected, properly sealed, officially verified, goes to royal household. Whether Pharaoh personally consumes it is irrelevant. The principle matters. Best quality for highest position. This royal allocation means some of your virgin honey may end up in royal storage. This possibility creates subtle pressure. Your honey might reach Pharaoh. Might represent your work before highest authority. Might reflect well on entire production system. Might reflect poorly if quality is inadequate. The pressure is indirect but present. You manage this pressure through consistency. Through always delivering your best virgin honey. Through never compromising quality for quantity. Through maintaining standards even when no one is watching during production. The external pressure becomes internal discipline. The discipline becomes habit. The habit becomes your practice. The economic relationships extend to other craftspeople. You trade honey for pottery sometimes. For metalwork. For textiles. For services you cannot provide yourself. These trades happen informally mostly. But they are real economic exchanges. Honey as currency. Honey as wealth. Honey as leverage in acquiring what you need. Some beekeepers are more entrepreneurial. They actively seek trading opportunities. Build networks of exchange. Maximize honey value through strategic trading. You are less entrepreneurial. You focus on production. You trade when necessary but do not pursue it actively. Different approaches. Both viable. Neither obviously superior. The administrative system prefers predictability. Steady honey production year after year is valued more highly than erratic production, high one year, low the next, high again, then low. Even if erratic production averages to same total, steady production is preferred. It allows better planning. Better resource allocation. Better integration with other administrative functions. You try to provide this predictability. Through maintaining colony health. Through careful management. Through avoiding risky decisions that might create dramatic gains or dramatic losses. Steadiness over drama. Reliability over spectacular performance. This conservative approach aligns with administrative preferences. Serves your long-term interests. The system also includes consequences for failure. If you consistently underdeliver, you lose standing. May lose resource allocations. May lose favorable positioning. In extreme cases, may lose your role entirely. Someone else receives your hives. Your position. Your opportunity. This threat is real but distant if you maintain adequate performance. You have seen beekeepers fail. Watched them lose position. Sometimes through their own mismanagement. Sometimes through bad luck. Disease decimates colonies, weather destroys crops, theft removes stored honey. The system is not entirely forgiving of bad luck. Some forgiveness exists. But sustained failure leads to replacement regardless of cause. You understand this reality. You accept it. It motivates careful management. Motivates attention to details. Motivates doing what works rather than experimenting excessively. Proven practices minimize failure risk. Innovation increases risk. In a system with consequences for failure, conservatism makes sense. The administrative structure provides stability. You know what is expected. You know how to meet expectations. You know consequences of meeting or not meeting them. This clarity is valuable. Ambiguous expectations would be more stressful. Clear expectations allow focused effort. The structure also provides identity. You are a beekeeper. Officially. In records. In administrative understanding. This identity gives you position in society. Gives you function. Gives you purpose beyond mere survival. You are not just person. You are beekeeper. Role holder. System participant. This identity matters more than you consciously realize. It shapes how others see you. How you see yourself. What opportunities are available. What is expected of you. Who you might collaborate with. Who you might marry. Where you might live. Identity ramifies through life in countless ways. The system is old. Predates you by generations. Will continue long after you. Your father worked within this system. His father before him probably did as well. Systems this old have momentum. Have proven sustainability. Have adapted to countless changes while maintaining core functions. You sometimes think about the future. Whether this system will continue. Whether your children might work within it. Whether honey will always be valuable. Whether administrative structures will persist. But these thoughts are speculation. What matters is present. The system exists now. You participate now. Tomorrow is beyond prediction. Today requires attention. The delivery is complete. The weight is recorded. The overseer nods approval. Your standing is maintained. The system continues. Your role within it continues. The cycle of production and delivery continues. One season into the next. 1 year into another. The steady rhythm of participation in something larger than yourself. Something that provides structure. Security. Purpose. Identity. The system is not perfect. But it functions. It persists. It provides framework within which honey production occurs. Within which your life occurs. Within which meaning and sustenance and future possibility are found. Deliver, record, continue. Deliver, record, continue. The rhythm that connects individual effort to collective function. The rhythm that transforms personal work into administrative contribution. The rhythm that sustains both you and the system. The rhythm that is participation. Royal does not need to mean you walk into the Pharaoh's private room holding a jar like a jewel. It can mean something steadier. You serve a system that feeds elite and institutional life. Honey is valuable. It is controlled. It moves through officials, storehouses, and taxes/tribute. Some scholarship explicitly connects Recamir's tomb scenes to goods including honey being received as tax/tribute and to provisioning institutional needs. So honey for the pharaoh is best understood as honey for the top of the pyramid. The court, the temple households, the administrators who represent power. Not because everyone eats honey. Because honey is one of the things power can afford to allocate. Your daily method is not invented in your lifetime. Egypt has a long tradition of beekeeping imagery older than you, older than your father's father. At the Sun Temple of Niuser, 5th dynasty, reliefs depict beekeeping steps, smoke at the hives, honey handling, and sealing vessels, an older, official depiction of the same logic you practice now. That older relief matters for one simple reason. It shows this work wasn't a curiosity. It was an organized practice worth carving into stone. And your hands inherit that. In a world where honey is valuable, someone is responsible for it. Sources discussing ancient Near Eastern/Egyptian apiculture note a Middle Kingdom era official title translated as Overseer of the Beekeepers, which supports the idea that beekeeping could be managed as an administrative domain, not just farm labor. For you, that means you are evaluated. Not morally. Operationally. How many jars delivered? How cleanly sealed? How consistent the quality? How few colonies lost. Your job has quiet performance metrics. And you learn to live with that, because stability is the reward. You return to the hives again after the first harvest. Not because you love disturbance. Because timing matters. The hives are horizontal tubes, mud and clay cylinders stacked so the ends are accessible. Modern reconstructions and discussions of the ancient Egyptian system emphasize stacked horizontal clay hives and the practice of harvesting comb from them. You work from the end with intention. You do not rip the hive open. You loosen the plug. You breathe smoke gently. And you wait for the colony to shift. It is a slow negotiation. Not a battle. The practice of moving hives is not new to you. It is ancient. Older than your father's work. Older than his father's. Moving hives along the Nile follows the blooms. This is not superstition. This is observation accumulated over generations. Flowers bloom in sequence. North to south. South to north. Following water. Following season. Following the reliable rhythm of the river. Your bees can only work where flowers bloom. A field empty of flowers produces no nectar. No nectar means no honey. Simple. Obvious. But requiring work to address. So hives move. They move by raft. They move at night. They move with care that exhausts those who provide it. This work happens twice each year. Sometimes 3 times if conditions favor it. The pattern is consistent enough that you plan for it. Prepare for it. Budget time and effort around it. The Nile floods predictably. The flood deposits silt. The silt grows flowers. First in one region. Then gradually in others. The blooming moves like a slow wave. North or south depending on season. Lower Egypt, the Delta region grows chamomile, cornflowers, flax, clover, roses, wild celery. These bloom early in certain seasons. Rich in nectar. Excellent for honey production. Upper Egypt has different plants. Different blooming times. Different qualities of nectar. If you keep your hives stationary, you harvest once per season. When local flowers bloom. Then nothing. Bees idle. Potential wasted. But if you move hives to follow blooms, you harvest multiple times. The bees work continuously. Production increases substantially. The administrative oversight values this. Expects this. Counts on this. So you move hives. Not alone. This work requires help. Several people. Sometimes hired labor. Sometimes family. Sometimes arrangements with other beekeepers who move their own hives in coordination. The rafts are built specifically for hive transport. Not fancy. Functional. Large wicker frames. Reed bundles lashed together. Enough buoyancy to carry weight. Enough stability to prevent tipping. The hives themselves are not light. Each hive a horizontal clay tube, 1.5 arm lengths long, as thick as your torso, contains thousands of bees, honeycomb, brood, stored honey, pollen. Weight accumulates. You cannot transport 1 or 2 hives. That would not justify the effort. You transport many. Perhaps 30. Perhaps 50. Stacked carefully. Arranged to distribute weight. Creating a pyramid-like configuration that remains stable during river movement. The stacking is critical. Too high and the structure becomes unstable. Too wide and it becomes unmanageable. The configuration develops through trial. Through watching what works. Through adjusting when something fails. You stack hives with their openings facing outward. This allows ventilation. Prevents overheating. Allows bees to leave and return even during transport. Though most bees remain inside when the hive is moving. The hives are secured with rope. Natural fiber rope. Not tight enough to damage the clay. Tight enough to prevent shifting. Each tier is lashed to the tier below. The whole structure is lashed to the raft frame. This securing takes hours. Cannot be rushed. A hive that shifts during transport can break. Can spill bees. Can cause chaos that ruins the entire journey. You work methodically. Check each lashing. Test stability. Rock the structure gently to see if anything moves. Adjust. Retie. Test again. Once secured, the raft must be launched. This requires timing. You wait for favorable river conditions. Not during flood peak. Not when current is too strong. Not when wind opposes river flow. You launch at dusk. As light fades. This has multiple advantages. First, temperature. Daytime heat stresses bees. Makes them agitated. Increases risk of swarming. Evening coolness calms colonies. Reduces activity. Makes transport safer. Second, visibility. You travel by moonlight and starlight. Enough to navigate. Not enough to distract bees with external activity. Darkness keeps bees inside hives. Reduces flight. Prevents losses. Third, river traffic. Daytime river carries commercial boats, fishing vessels, administrative transport. Night river is quieter. Fewer collisions. Fewer disturbances. Easier navigation. The raft is pulled from shore into current. Then flow takes over. You do not fight the river. You use it. Steer with poles. Adjust position with paddling. But primarily, you ride the natural flow. One person remains on the raft constantly. Usually you. Sometimes another experienced keeper. Someone who knows bees. Who can respond if problems develop. Problems can develop. A hive can begin overheating. You hear this. The hum changes. Becomes more intense. Higher pitched. Urgent. Response, increase ventilation. Loosen covering slightly. Direct cooler air toward the affected hive. Monitor carefully. Sometimes you must land immediately. Remove the hive from the stack. Allow full ventilation. Then continue. Another problem, structural instability. Rope stretches. Gets wet. Loosens. A hive can begin shifting. You feel this through the raft. A change in balance. A slight listing. Response, paddle to shore immediately. Resecure everything. Check for damage. Test stability again. Only then continue. Another problem, swarming. Despite evening timing. Despite calm conditions. Sometimes a colony decides to swarm during transport. When a swarm begins, thousands of bees exit the hive. They cluster nearby. On the raft. On you. On the stack. The sound is overwhelming. The risk is substantial. Bees in the air at night. Over water. Many will be lost. Response, there is no good response. You cannot prevent a swarm in progress. You can only minimize loss. Some keepers carry an empty hive. If a swarm clusters, you can sometimes capture the cluster. Place it in the empty hive. Save the bees. But this requires luck. Requires the queen to cluster accessibly. Not always possible. Usually, you accept some loss. The swarm happens. Many bees are lost to the river. The remaining colony continues. Diminished but viable. You make notes. That colony will need attention. Supplementation. Perhaps combining with another weakened colony later. The journey distances vary. Sometimes a few miles. Sometimes many miles. A long journey might take 3 nights. You stop during day. Land the raft in shade if possible. Keep watch over the hives. Ensure they do not overheat. Ensure no one disturbs them. During day stops, you sleep. But lightly. One ear always attentive to the hum. The hum tells you colony status. As long as the hum is steady, the colony is stable. If the hum changes, you investigate immediately. You carry provisions. Bread. Dried fish. Beer. Water. Simple food that travels. Nothing requiring fire. Fire near hives is avoided always. You also carry repair materials. Extra rope. Clay for patching hives if cracks develop. Wooden plugs for sealing openings if needed. Tools for emergency adjustments. The destination is predetermined. You have scouted before. You know where flowers bloom. Where suitable landing exists. Where you can position hives for several weeks of harvest. Arrival happens at night. You land. You do not unload immediately. You wait for dawn. Let bees wake gradually to new location. Then carefully, one by one, you remove hives from the stack. Each hive is carried to its new position. You place them in rows. Openings facing consistent direction. Spacing adequate for access. Positioning considering sun exposure, wind direction, proximity to water. Once positioned, you open the entrance fully. Remove the partial blocks used during transport. Bees begin orienting to the new location. They fly in increasing circles. Learning landmarks. Establishing navigation. This orienting takes hours. During this time, you do not disturb them. You watch. You ensure they are finding nearby flowers. You look for problems. A hive that does not orient well may have lost its queen during transport. Requires investigation. The first day at a new location is observation. Watching how colonies respond. Whether they find forage easily. Whether they seem stressed or calm. Whether the site is actually suitable or requires adjustment. If the site is poor, flowers scarce, water too distant, predators present, you must move again. This is exhausting. Demoralizing. But necessary. A poor location produces poor results. Better to move quickly than to persist unsuccessfully. If the site is good, and usually your scouting ensures it is, you establish routine. You harvest as flowers permit. You manage colonies as needed. You remain at this location for weeks. Sometimes a month. Until flower production declines. Until the bloom moves elsewhere. Then you prepare to move again. Back to the raft. Back to the river. Back to the work of transport. Following the bloom. Following the season. Following the ancient pattern that produces maximum honey. This migratory practice is not universal. Some beekeepers remain stationary. They harvest what their region produces. Nothing more. Their yields are consistent but limited. Migratory beekeepers produce substantially more. But at cost. The transport is labor-intensive. Risky. Exhausting. Not everyone can manage it. Not everyone chooses to. You choose to because the returns justify the effort. More honey means more delivery to administrative storage. Means better standing. Means more resources allocated to your work. Means survival and sustainability for your practice. The administrative oversight understands this. They know which beekeepers are migratory. Which are stationary. They adjust expectations accordingly. They value migratory production more. Because it serves their needs better. This creates pressure. Pressure to keep moving. To maximize production. To never miss a bloom opportunity. The pressure is not spoken. It exists in the records. In the tallies. In the comparison of your yields to others' yields. You respond to this pressure by maintaining discipline. By planning carefully. By executing moves efficiently. By minimizing losses. By treating transport as a skill requiring constant refinement. Over years, You have developed systems. You know which knots hold best for raft lashing. You know which moon phases provide best night visibility. You know which river sections are safest. You know how to read bee behavior during transport. This knowledge is not written. It is practiced. You could explain some of it. But much of it lives in your hands. In your ears. In your capacity to sense when something is wrong before you consciously understand what. You have also learned what not to do. Do not transport during new moon, too dark, navigation dangerous. Do not transport if bees are already stressed, compounding problems. Do not stack more hives than you can safely secure, ambition leads to disaster. These lessons came through experience. Through mistakes. Through watching other keepers' failures. Through adjusting when something went wrong. Through slow accumulation of practical wisdom. Younger beekeepers sometimes ask you about transport. You tell them the basics. Stack carefully. Lash thoroughly. Travel at night. Watch the hum. Land if problems develop. Simple advice. Accurate. But incomplete. The incomplete part cannot be taught quickly. It develops through doing. Through years of loading rafts. Through nights on the river. Through responding to unexpected situations. Through building the intuitive sense that distinguishes experienced from inexperienced keepers. Some younger keepers try to shortcut this. They transport too soon. With too little preparation. With too much confidence. Often, they lose hives. Sometimes, they lose entire rafts. They learn expensive lessons. Necessary lessons. But expensive. You try to warn them. But warnings without experience behind them sound like caution from the old. Like unnecessary worry. They must discover for themselves that the risks are real. That the river does not forgive carelessness. That bees do not tolerate poor handling. Eventually, they learn. The survivors learn. Those who cannot learn either stop trying migratory practice or stop beekeeping entirely. This is harsh but factual. The work requires specific capabilities. Not everyone has them. You wonder sometimes if your children will continue this work. If they will move hives along the Nile. If they will navigate the night river with pyramid stacks of clay tubes humming with tens of thousands of bees. Perhaps. Perhaps not. They see the work. They help sometimes. But they also see the exhaustion. The risk. The constant pressure to produce. They may choose differently. You will not force them. This work must be chosen. Forced commitment leads to carelessness. Carelessness leads to failure. For now, the work continues. The hives will move again next season. You will build the raft again. You will lash the hives again. You will launch at dusk again. You will navigate by moonlight again. You will follow the flowers again. This is migratory beekeeping. Ancient. Demanding. Essential. Exhausting. Productive. The foundation of high honey yields. The reason your name appears favorably in administrative tallies. The work that makes your role sustainable. The raft rocks gently on the river. The hum is steady. The stars provide enough light. The current carries you north. The flowers wait somewhere ahead. The work continues. Float, pull, adjust. Float, pull, adjust. The rhythm of river transport. The rhythm older than memory. The rhythm that produces honey for temples. For administrators. For Pharaoh. For gods. The hum continues. The river flows. The night passes. The bloom approaches. The smoke is never thick like a bonfire. It is controlled, thin enough to drift, strong enough to calm. Some analyses of Recamier's scene and ancient depictions describe the smoking technique as an important feature of the beekeeping imagery. Your ear listens for the change in hum. When the tone lowers and steadies, you move. When the tone rises, you pause. A good apiarist does not force the day. A good apiarist keeps the day gentle enough that tomorrow still exists. Now you pour. You do not dump. You let honey fall in a thick line from reed or comb. You guide it into a dark jar where torchlight turns it into something that looks almost unreal. But it is not magic. It is work, bee work and human work meeting in a vessel. Multiple descriptions of Egyptian beekeeping scenes emphasize pouring honey into jars for storage. You keep the rim clean. You keep the jar stable. You keep the honey steady enough that it doesn't smear the outside, because outside smear attracts insects and attention. A jar is only valuable if it can be trusted. So the sealing matters. Old Kingdom relief summaries explicitly include a beekeeper sealing the vessels after honey handling. You press sealing material, often clay, over the closure. You smooth it. You mark it the way your estate requires. Even if the mark is simple, the concept is strong. A sealed jar carries the authority of the institution. If it is opened early, someone will know. And that knowledge is deterrence, not romance. Among workers, quality becomes a quiet language. Some honey is lighter. Some darker. Some cleaner. Some has more wax mixed through and needs more settling. Academic discussion in this area notes ancient references to different grades of honey, including terms translated like red honey. This matters because it affects where jars go. Not every jar goes upward. Some stays as rations. Some becomes offerings. Some is reserved for higher tables. So you do what professionals do. You separate output by quality and cleanliness. You reduce surprises later. After sealing, the work becomes movement. Jars travel. And the Nile is the quiet road that makes large distribution possible. You don't need to turn this into a boat adventure. You only need the calm realism. A jar wrapped in cloth. Set into a basket. Handled carefully because cracks cost money and trust. You carry jars to a collection point. A steward checks. A runner notes. The system absorbs your work. And somewhere later, maybe at a temple storehouse, maybe at an elite estate, someone opens a jar and sees that the seal was intact. That is how your day becomes value. When the honey is done, wax remains. And wax is not scraps. Scholarly discussions of bees and beekeeping in Egypt treat wax and honey as central bee products with practical roles. You collect wax carefully. You keep it clean. You store it in a way that avoids contamination. Wax is a material that can be shaped, traded, and used in multiple contexts. So half of your job is not sweetness. Half is material management. And material management is the quiet backbone of ancient economies. By late afternoon, the air is warmer, the light harsher. You return to the apiary one more time, not to harvest, but to check. You listen. Hum steady. Good. You close plugs carefully. You leave the hives in peace. And the best sign of success is simple. The bees go back to work. The jars are sealed. The storehouse has received. No argument erupted. No jar cracked. No hive collapsed. Just a day completed. And if the listener is tired, this is where the mind can soften. Because the work is finished, and the hum is no longer urgent. It's just sound. A soft, low drum of wings. Some days begin with easy hum. Other days begin with the wrong sound. Not loud. Wrong. A thinner buzz from one section of the hive wall, like a drum that lost tension overnight. You stop before touching anything. Because a good apiarist learns this early. If you rush the bees, you create the trouble you feared. So you listen again. You place your palm on the clay tube lightly. Cool clay. A faint vibration. And you notice what the air tells you. A different smell. Not only honey and wax. Something sharper. A tiny hint of fermentation near the opening. a hive that has been too warm, too damp, or too disturbed. You don't diagnose like a modern scientist. You diagnose like a working professional. You decide how to handle it without breaking the colony. You prepare smoke carefully. Not thick. Not dramatic. Just enough to settle the surface agitation. Egyptian beekeeping depictions and discussions repeatedly include the use of smoke at stacked horizontal hives, both in Old Kingdom relief descriptions, Niuzer's Sun Temple scenes, and New Kingdom contexts, Recamir's tomb scene. You bring the smoking vessel close. A thin ribbon drifts in. The hum shifts, softening. And you wait. The waiting is part of the job. The waiting is also where the listener can breathe. Because the most calming jobs are the ones where attention is quiet, not frantic. At the work surface, you discover the first real problem. A jar one you cleaned, one you expected to store cleanly has a hairline crack. It's not a dramatic break. It's worse than that. It's the kind of crack that stays hidden until the honey begins to seep. And honey seeping is not only waste. It is invitation. Ants. Dust. Questions. So you don't panic. You make the smallest decision that solves the biggest risk. Transfer. You lift the jar carefully, keeping the crack facing upward. You pour slowly into a clean vessel. You wipe the rim. You keep the outside clean. Then you mark the jar as damaged, so it doesn't return to circulation. This is where royal becomes real without fantasy. Institutions survive on small controls. Jars that leak make institutions noisy. So your job is to keep them quiet. Ants arrive the way taxes arrive, reliably. You notice the first line near a smear. A thin moving thread. Then another. You don't crush them in anger. You remove the reason they came. You wipe the surface. You lift jars onto a higher platform. You keep the outside clean, because in hot climates sweetness travels quickly through insect worlds. The lesson is calm and practical. Honey is valuable not only to people. Everything wants it. So the job includes quiet defense. Not against armies. Against small lives that multiply fast. You let the honey settle again. Because honey that has been disturbed, poured, transferred, strained needs time to become itself. This is where you do work that doesn't look like work. You watch. You wait. You skim foam. You let small wax fragments rise where you can remove them. Your hands stay busy without rushing. And in that calm, you remember something you've heard officials say. The best honey is the honey that arrives clean. Not the honey that arrives fast. Among the quiet curiosities historians talk about is that ancient Egypt recognized different grades of honey, including one described with the term DSRT, often translated as red honey. You don't use this as trivia. You use it as atmosphere. Not all honey looks the same in the jar. Not all honey behaves the same. Some is darker, richer, heavier. Some lighter. Some more aromatic, depending on where the bees worked the day before. So you sort jars by what you can observe. Color, clarity, scent, thickness. Then you let the stewards turn your sorting into policy. That division hands to office is the hidden rhythm of ancient economies. Later, when you carry jars toward the storehouse, you think of the painted scene recorded in Recamir's tomb, beekeepers handling hives and honey in a way recognizable enough that modern museums preserve it as a facsimile. You don't think, I will be remembered. You think, this is normal. That is what makes the scene valuable. It shows the job as routine, organized, real, repeated. The day you live is the day depicted. Not a mythic event. A workday. And that is exactly what your channel is built to deliver. At the storehouse, the air changes. Less river smell. More dry reed and clay. A steward checks seals. A clerk watches your jars arrive. You do not narrate your feelings. You present output. This is where overseer matters as a concept even when you never speak directly to such a person. Because your work is evaluated within an administrative world where official roles managing beekeeping and honey are attested in scholarship, for example, overseer of the beekeepers. You set a jar down. The steward looks at the ceiling. They look at the cleanliness. They look at the consistency. They nod. A nod is enough. That nod means the system accepts your day. Honey isn't stored only because it tastes good. It is stored because it does work. Some sources emphasize honey's role in healing contexts in antiquity, wounds, stomach troubles, and more broadly as a valuable, multi-purpose substance. You keep your claims modest. You don't say everyone uses honey for medicine every day. You say, honey is respected enough that institutions want it stored, tracked, and protected. So the jars matter. So the ceilings matter. So your hands matter. And this connection be work to institutional use is the educational core of the episode. Wax is collected and handled, not tossed. It is counted as material. You wrap it. You keep it away from dust. You deliver it separately. Even if the officials care more about honey, wax remains valuable as a bee product with practical roles discussed in studies and surveys of ancient beekeeping. So the day has two ledgers, even if only one is written down. Honey output. Wax output. And both are built out of the same quiet hum. You are compensated, but not always in a way that makes a modern story easy. You don't demand coins. You exist in a world where institutions allocate. Where rations and provisions can be part of how labor is sustained. I won't invent exact numbers or wages. But I will keep the reality honest. A worker's stability often depends on the storehouse. And your work feeds the storehouse. So your work tends to keep your household steadier than the work of someone whose output is harder to measure. That is the calm economic truth. Not glamorous. Reliable. Before evening, you return to the problem hive. You listen again. The hum is fuller now. Not perfect. Better. You adjust the plug. You reduce disturbance. You leave the hive in peace. This is what skill feels like in beekeeping. Not domination. Reduction of stress. A day that ends with the colony still working tomorrow. That is your definition of success. You think, briefly, of how old this work is in Egypt. Niuser's 5th dynasty Sun Temple reliefs show a sequence of beekeeping actions: smoking hives, pouring honey, and sealing vessels, evidence that this was an established practice centuries before your own century. That continuity is not just history trivia. It's a form of comfort. People did this before you. People will do it after you. Your day belongs to a long human pattern of careful extraction and careful storage. And the listener can rest inside that continuity too. Your profession is not celebrated with songs. But it has quiet prestige. Because it sits near valuable goods. Because it requires calm hands. Because it depends on trust. Institutions place value on honey as a controlled commodity, enough value that officials oversee the practice and that scenes are recorded among official goods imagery. So you walk through the village without being famous, but without being dismissed. You are useful in the ancient sense. And usefulness is a kind of social armor. At home, you wash again. Honey is stubborn. Wax clings. Smoke stays in cloth. You rinse with water that smells faintly of the river. You scrape a little wax from a nail line. You wipe your tools. You set them where tomorrow's hand will find them. This is the sleep story's gentle lesson. An orderly workspace creates a quieter mind. And a quieter mind sleeps easier. Return, in thought, to the apiary wall. The clay tubes are cool in the early hour. The hum is steady. A small ribbon of smoke rises and disappears. And somewhere on the workbench, honey drips in slow time. Drop. Pause. Drop. The rhythm is not urgent. It's patient. Your breathing follows it. In. And out. Hum. And hush. Drop. And still. And as the day fades, the job becomes pure texture. Clay. Wax. Smoke. And the low, hypnotic sound of wings. You don't need to hold the story now. It will keep moving without you. You can sleep. Your work does not exist alone. It begins and ends inside a household. At dawn, before smoke touches the hives, there is movement at home, quiet, practical movement. Your wife prepares the morning food. Not elaborate. Bread baked the day before, maybe onions or dried fruit, water drawn from a jar kept cool in the shade. Children are awake early. Egypt rises with the sun. They watch you dress, because work clothes tell stories. They know which tunic is for field labor, which for hive work. Your family understands the job not through words, but through rhythm, when you leave, when you return, how your hands smell when you wash. Honey on skin is not subtle. Neither is smoke. You wear linen, like most people who can afford it. Light-colored, loose, practical. Linen breathes. Cotton is not yet part of your world. Your tunic is simple, tied at the waist. Sometimes a second layer is added early in the morning when the air is cool. There is no specialized beekeeper suit. Protection is improvised. Loose cloth around the neck. Linen sleeves pulled lower over the arms. Smoke to calm, not armor to fight. You rely more on technique than protection. Because stings happen but fewer happen when you work slowly. Your wife knows this. She has seen swollen fingers before. She has applied cool water, honey itself sometimes, and calm patience. Your children are told not to play near the hives. Not because bees are evil. Because bees are busy. They learn early that certain spaces belong to work. They hear the hum and understand it means do not disturb. Sometimes they help in small ways, carrying a clean cloth, fetching water, watching from a distance. They learn that honey is not magic. It is earned. And they learn something deeper without instruction. That calm attention produces sweetness. Honey is not your daily food. That matters. Bread and beer are staples. Vegetables, fruit when available. Honey is precious, reserved, measured. That is why its production is supervised and recorded. When your family tastes honey, it is special. A small amount. A finger dipped. A quiet pleasure. And this rarity is part of honey's power. If everyone had it all the time, it would not be guarded so carefully. Not every year is kind. Some years the Nile floods poorly. Fields suffer. Flowering changes. Bees fly farther, or less. Some years the heat lingers too long. Clay hives crack. Wax softens. Colonies weaken. You cannot control this. You adapt. You move hives slightly. You shade them. You harvest less. You report honestly. Calamity in this world is not always war. Often it is absence, less water, fewer flowers, quieter hives. And quieter hives mean fewer jars. Fewer jars mean tension in the system. When armies move, supply chains tighten. Even if battles are far away, institutions prepare. Food, oil, honey, these are strategic goods. Honey does not spoil easily. It travels. It heals wounds. So during unstable times, honey becomes more important, not less. Your work becomes more watched. More counted. More guarded. You do not fight. But you support those who do. And that places weight on your day. Honey travels carefully. Jars are sealed with clay. Wrapped in cloth. Placed in baskets. Carried by people who know the value of what they hold. When transport extends farther, the Nile becomes the road. Boats move slowly. Jars are packed tightly. Cracks are disaster. Spills are reported. A lost jar is not oops. It is an investigation. So honey moves under supervision. Not secrecy oversight. Honey attracts thieves the way it attracts ants. Not dramatic thieves. Quiet ones. A finger dipped. A seal broken and resa led poorly. A jar misplaced. This is why sealing matters. This is why marks matter. This is why jars are counted. You do not accuse. You design your process so accusation is unnecessary. If a seal is broken, it is visible. If honey is gone, it is traceable. The system protects itself by design. Poisoning is not fantasy. Ancient people understood it. Honey could be contaminated deliberately or accidentally, if bees fed on the wrong plants. You watch for smell. For taste changes. For fermentation where there should be none. If a jar seems wrong, you set it aside. You do not hope. Because honey that harms the wrong person creates consequences far beyond the apiary. So caution becomes habit. Habit becomes survival. Your wife does not work the hives. But she works the household. She manages food. She manages children. She manages illness. And when your workday runs long, she absorbs the strain. This division is not weakness. It is structure. Your ability to work calmly depends on a stable home. And she understands the value of your profession as clearly as any steward. At home, clothes are mended. Linen wears. Smoke stains. Wax hardens. Your wife patches quietly. Children learn by watching. This is how skills move across generations, not by instruction, but by repetition. At night, you do not discuss storehouse numbers. You do not repeat rumors. You speak of weather. Of bees. Of whether flowering seems early or late. This is practical conversation. Because practical conversation prepares tomorrow. And it also prepares sleep. Bees face dangers beyond humans. Heat. Predators. Flood damage. Collapsed hives. You repair when possible. You abandon when necessary. Not every colony survives every year. And that loss is accepted, not emotionally easy, but understood. Because ancient life is resilient, not sentimental. Bees are not gods to you. But they exist in a world where gods are real. Honey appears in offerings. In temple contexts. So your work touches ritual without becoming mystical. You respect this boundary. You deliver what is required. Others perform the ceremonies. You are known. Not famous. Trusted. When someone says, he tends the hives, it carries meaning. It suggests patience. Reliability. Clean work. That reputation protects your family more than guards would. Years of bending. Of smoke. Of heat. Hands stiffen. But experience deepens. Older apiarists move slower and get stung less. They hear what younger ones miss. They know when to stop. This knowledge is not written. It is lived. One day, a child yours or another's stands closer to the hives. You guide their hands. Not with force. With patience. You teach them the rule that matters most. Never rush bees. If they learn that, the rest follows. Return now to the apiary at dusk. The hum lowers. The air cools. The clay holds the day's warmth a little longer. You close the hive openings. You step back. At home, children sleep. Your wife rests. The jars are sealed. The river moves quietly in the dark. And the world holds. Honey does not drip now. It waits. Like you. Like sleep. Your work is measured in seasons more than dates. You do not need a numbered month to feel change. You feel it in flowering. In water height. in the smell of the air at dawn. Some periods are generous, blossoms thick along irrigation edges, bees returning heavy. Some periods thin out, fewer flowers, longer flights, weaker hum. In a generous season, you harvest lightly and repeatedly. In a thin season, you protect the colony more than you harvest. This is the craft's quiet wisdom. A short-term greed can destroy next season's sweetness. So you take what the bees can spare. And you leave enough for the colony to continue. When the Nile rises, you respect it. Water makes fields possible, but water also changes everything. Paths turn soft. Storage rooms get damp if they're badly placed. Clay hives can soften or crack if they are hit with the wrong kind of moisture. So flood season is not only farming season. It is risk season. You elevate baskets. You keep jars away from seepage. You check the hive wall for hairline cracks in the clay. Small repairs matter now. Mud pressed into a seam. A reinforcing layer. A shade cloth adjusted. These aren't grand actions. But grand failures are usually made of small neglect. When water is lower and flowering is thinner, you work differently. Less harvesting. More checking. More patience. Because bees that fly too far for nectar come back tired. A tired colony is more defensive. A tired colony is also less productive. So you reduce disturbance. You smoke less. You open fewer hives. You focus on keeping colonies stable through the harsh stretch. This is the apiarist's emotional discipline. You don't demand the season be generous. You adjust your expectations to reality. Honey's value increases when it moves away from the hive wall. The farther it travels, the more chances for loss. So transport is treated like a ritual of caution. Jars are sealed. Cloth is wrapped. Baskets are tied. Carriers step carefully. If the journey is longer, honey may travel by boat along calm channels. Not as an adventure. As a logistics routine. Threats are ordinary. A jar dropped. A basket strap snapped. A boat bumping the bank. A curious hand trying the seal. Insects drawn to a smear. This is where your earlier cleanliness work proves its worth. A jar that is clean outside is less interesting to ants and less likely to start rumors. A seal that is intact reduces arguments. And arguments are the real cost of transport. Arguments delay distribution. The fear of poisoning is real, but it isn't treated like a thriller. It is treated like a checklist. You smell. You look. You watch for fermentation where you didn't expect it. You notice if foam returns too quickly. You don't make accusations. You isolate suspicious jars. You keep them out of the main flow until an official decides. This is the ancient version of quality control. Not a laboratory, but a trained eye and a cautious hand. At the storehouse, your job stops being sensory and becomes administrative. A steward checks the jar count. A clerk marks something down. Honey becomes a line in a system. You don't need to understand every notation to understand the mood. When counts are healthy, the atmosphere is looser. When counts are thin, voices get shorter. Your day is still the same smoke, hum, jars, but the pressure changes. And in those moments, you remember why your profession holds quiet respect. You produce something measurable. Something valuable. Something hard to fake when sealing and oversight are done properly. Your household lives close to the edge like most households do. But your work offers one subtle protection. Regular usefulness. Institutions protect what they rely on. Not always kindly, but reliably. A craft tied to storehouse goods can keep a family steadier than work that disappears when the season turns. So your wife's labor and your labor interlock. She makes stability at home. You make stability in output. Together, you make a life that holds. As children grow, they learn which skills are safe and which are costly. Some choose fields. Some choose craft. Some follow institutions. A child who watches you learns a certain posture toward life. Slow hands. Clean tools. Quiet attention. Even if they never tend bees, that posture stays. That is an inheritance deeper than honey. One day, the smoke is too strong. Not because you lost skill. Because the ember flared unexpectedly. The hum rises. Bees surge toward the opening. You step back. You don't flail. You don't shout. You reduce the smoke. You wait. This is an important moment for your channel's tone. The problem is solved with calm technique, not drama. Because the listener should feel safety even inside danger. Eventually the hum lowers. The colony resettles. You return slowly. And the day continues. A jar arrives at the storehouse with a broken seal. That does not automatically mean theft. It could be a mishandled basket. A cracked plug. A careless carrier. But it does mean a pause. The steward looks. The clerk waits. Your stomach tightens, but you keep your face calm. They examine the break. They compare the jar's fill level against expected. They decide what to do: reseal, isolate, or investigate. And you learn again the ancient truth. Institutions are sensitive to broken closures because broken closures create uncertainty. Uncertainty is the enemy of distribution. So your job isn't only producing honey. It's reducing uncertainty. Honey moves into sacred contexts because it is valuable and rare. You don't need to describe ceremonies in detail. You don't need to invent prayers. You only need the simple reality. Some jars go upward. Some go to temples. Some go to elite tables. The Apiarist does not perform the ritual. The Apiarist supplies the material. That distance keeps your story accurate and calm. Honey is not simply food. It is sacred substance. Connected to gods. Connected to theology. Connected to practices that define relationship between human and divine. The connection begins with creation. According to tradition, bees originated from tears of Ra. The sun god wept. His tears fell to earth. Where tears touched ground, they transformed into bees. Bees made honeycomb. Worked flowers. Produced honey and wax. All from divine tears. This origin story gives bees sacred status. They are not merely insects. They are emanations of divine grief. They are carriers of solar essence. They are living connections between sky and earth. Between God and creation. You do not meditate on this theology often. You are a practical worker. But you know the story. You understand bees are special. You treat them with respect that goes beyond economic value. The respect includes acknowledgement of sacred origins. Of theological significance. Of connection to powers greater than human. Pharaoh bears title related to bees. Lord of Bees. Not symbolic. Official title. Every pharaoh throughout history carries this designation. The bee hieroglyph appears on royal cartouches. On official inscriptions. On monuments. The association between pharaoh and bees is fundamental to royal identity. This association means honey you produce may serve royal and divine purposes simultaneously. Honey delivered to temples may be offered to gods. Or consumed by Pharaoh who embodies gods on earth. The distinction blurs. Royal and divine overlap in Egyptian theology. Honey serves both realms simultaneously. The temples receive substantial honey allocations. Not for economic reasons alone. For ritual reasons. Honey is preferred offering to many gods. Not only offering. But important one. Acceptable. Pleasing to divine recipients. You sometimes see offering tables in temples. Stone tables with carved depressions. Some depressions filled with honey. Others with bread. others with beer, others with incense. The honey sits in carved bowls, gold-colored, sacred, presented to gods as gift from human realm. The honey remains on offering tables for prescribed time. Perhaps hours, perhaps days, depending on ritual requirements. Then priests remove it. What happens after removal varies. Sometimes honey is consumed by priests. Gods have received spiritual essence, physical honey becomes priestly ration. Sometimes honey is otherwise redistributed. Sometimes it is buried in sacred locations. You do not determine these ritual details. You simply provide honey suitable for offerings. Clean, pure, properly sealed until use. The ritual specialists handle theological requirements. Your role is production. Their role is proper use. Beeswax serves ritual purposes distinct from honey. Wax burns with bright, clean flame. Burns without smoke when pure. Burns without ash. These properties make beeswax theologically significant. Solar associations again. Ra is sun god. Sun burns bright without smoke. Beeswax replicates solar properties in miniature. Theological resonance. Temple lamps sometimes use beeswax. Not always. Oil lamps are more common. But special lamps. Ritual lamps. Ceremonial lighting. These may use beeswax because of its solar associations. Because of its connection to sacred origins. Because of its pure flame. You provide wax to temples as well as honey. The wax comes from your honey processing. After extraction. After pressing. The remaining wax is melted, purified, formed into blocks. These blocks are delivered along with honey. Both products from single source. Both sacred. Both useful. Beeswax also serves magical purposes. Magic and religion overlap in Egyptian practice. Not separate categories. Related practices. Addressing similar concerns through different means. Beeswax participates in both. One magical use involves figurines. Small sculptures formed from beeswax. These figurines represent various things. Sometimes enemies. Sometimes threats. Sometimes protective entities. The specific representation depends on spell purpose. The principle is sympathetic magic. Affecting the figurine affects what it represents. If figurine represents enemy, destroying figurine harms enemy. If figurine represents protection, preserving figurine maintains protection. The beeswax provides medium for this sympathetic connection. You have heard stories about beeswax crocodiles. A magician forms a crocodile from beeswax. Places it in water where enemy bathes. The wax figure animates. Attacks enemy. Drags them underwater. Holds them for days. Eventually releases them when spell purpose is fulfilled. Or does not release them if spell purpose is fatal. Whether these stories are literal truth or metaphorical teaching, you do not know. You are not magical practitioner. But the stories reveal cultural understanding of beeswax as magically potent. As capable of carrying intent. As responsive to magical manipulation. Another beeswax use is sealing. Not just honey jars. But magical seals. Protecting spaces. Protecting objects. Creating barriers against unwanted influences. The wax physical properties moldable when warm, solid when cool make it excellent for creating seals. The wax sacred properties solar origin, divine tears make those seals magically effective. Or so practitioners believe. You provide wax without judging how it is used. Magical users request beeswax. You provide it. They pay or arrange compensation. The exchange is practical. Whether magic works is their concern, not yours. Your concern is providing pure wax suitable for any use intended. Beeswax also serves in mummification. The embalming process requires multiple substances. natron, resins, oils, linen, and beeswax. The wax serves several functions in mummification. As sealant, as protective layer, as component of preservative mixtures. Some mummy wrappings are sealed with beeswax. The layers of linen are wrapped, then wax is applied to bind them. To seal them against air and moisture. To protect preserved body. This sealing creates airtight environment that assists preservation. Makes body less accessible to decay processes. The wax is also shaped into plugs. Inserted into body openings. Nose. Ears. Other openings. These plugs prevent entry of insects or other contaminants. Prevent loss of preservative substances applied internally. Create additional sealing layer. Complete the enclosure of preserved body. Wealthy burials may use substantial beeswax. Poor burials use little or none. The economic gradient is obvious. Beeswax is expensive. Using it extensively signals wealth. Signals importance. Signals investment in proper preservation for afterlife journey. You know your beeswax may end up in mummification. You find this neither disturbing nor especially meaningful. Death is universal. Preservation is reasonable response. Beeswax is useful substance for this purpose. That it comes from your hives is economic fact, not theological crisis. The soul is sometimes associated with bees. In some traditions, soul leaves body as bee at death. Flies away. Transforms. Continues in different form. This belief connects death, bees, transformation, continuity. Makes bees symbols of immortality. Of persistence beyond physical death. Whether people literally believe souls become bees or whether this is metaphorical language for something subtler, you are not certain. Different people might answer differently. What matters practically is that bees carry sacred associations. That honey and wax participate in these associations. That your work connects to sacred realms even though your daily activity is mundane. The theological significance does not make your work easier. Does not reduce labor. Does not prevent bee stings. Does not guarantee success. But it provides meaning beyond economic function. Provides sense that work matters beyond immediate usefulness. Connects your effort to larger purposes. You sometimes experience this connection directly. When delivering honey to temple. When seeing offering tables prepared. When hearing priests mention sacred substances. These moments remind you that mundane work participates in sacred patterns. That ordinary effort serves extraordinary purposes. The reminder is brief. You return to practical concerns quickly. But briefly, you recognize that your work is larger than itself. That bees are more than insects. That honey is more than sweetener. That participation in this work connects you to divine realm, however imperfectly. Religious specialists understand theological dimensions more deeply than you. They study. They practice. They maintain knowledge of proper rituals. Proper offerings. Proper interpretations. You defer to their expertise. You provide materials. They provide proper use. This division of labor works well. You would not want responsibility for theological correctness. You lack training. Lack knowledge. Lack authority. Better to focus on what you know. Let others focus on what they know. Collective knowledge serves better than any individual could manage alone. The sacred uses of honey and wax do not diminish ordinary uses. Honey is still sweetener. Wax is still sealant. Sacred and mundane coexist. Overlap. Mutually reinforce. The same substance serves multiple purposes simultaneously. This multiplicity is normal. Expected. Unproblematic. You notice beeswax properties that relate to solar theology. When you place wax in sunlight, it softens. Begins to melt. Becomes malleable. The heat of Ra transforms solid wax to liquid. Remove wax from sun, it cools. Solidifies. Resumes solid form. This transformation happens repeatedly. Endlessly. Sun heats, wax melts. Shade cools, wax hardens. This cyclical property reinforces solar associations. Ra is eternally renewing. Sun rises, crosses sky, sets, rises again. Daily cycle. Endless cycle. Beeswax's transformation mirrors this cycle. Melts and hardens like day and night. Like solar theology embodied in physical substance. You do not conduct rituals yourself. You are not priest. But you participate through production. Your work enables rituals. Enables offerings. Enables magical practices. Enables mummification. Enables sacred functions that define relationship between human community and divine powers. This participation is indirect but real. Without beekeepers, temples would lack adequate honey for offerings. Would lack beeswax for lamps and seals. Would lack materials for many practices that maintain proper relationship with gods. Your work is infrastructure for sacred functions. Not glamorous, but necessary. You take some satisfaction in this necessity. Your practical labor serves purposes beyond itself. Serves community needs. Serves religious needs. Serves purposes you may not fully understand but recognize as important. The satisfaction is quiet. Not boastful. Just acknowledgement that work matters in multiple ways simultaneously. The sacred origin story tears of Ra becoming bees you consider sometimes. Whether it is literally true. Whether it is metaphor. Whether difference between literal and metaphorical matters. You do not reach conclusions. You accept the story as cultural knowledge. As explanation. As connection between concrete reality of bees and abstract realm of divine powers. The story functions regardless of literal truth. It shapes how people think about bees. How they value honey. How they treat beekeepers. How they incorporate bee products into religious and magical practices. Functional truth may be more important than literal truth. The story works. That is sufficient. You have watched bees in sunlight. Thousands of bees hovering. Wings catching light. Creating shimmer. Brief flashes of reflected sun. The sight is beautiful. If someone told you these were transformed tears of sun god, you would understand why they thought so. The sight suggests transformation. Suggests divine origin. Suggests connection between insect activity and solar power. Whether the sight proves divine origin is different question. But the sight supports the story. Makes the story plausible. Makes it resonate with observable reality. This resonance between story and observation is perhaps what matters most. Not proof. Not literal truth. But meaningful connection between belief and experience. The practical implications of sacred status affect your work in subtle ways. You maintain higher standards than purely economic logic might require. You treat bees with respect beyond fear of stings. You handle honey with care beyond prevention of spillage. The sacred associations create discipline. Create attentiveness. Create quality that exceeds minimum requirements. This quality benefits everyone. Recipients receive better honey. Your reputation improves. Administrative oversight values consistency. The sacred becomes practical. The theological becomes economic. The division between sacred and mundane blurs productively. You do not discuss theology often. You discuss hive management. Honey yields. Resource needs. Practical matters. But theology underlies these discussions. Shapes attitudes. Influences decisions. Provides framework within which practical decisions make sense. The underlying presence of sacred meanings enriches practical work without dominating it. The balance is appropriate. Too much theological focus would interfere with practical work. Too little theological awareness would reduce work to mere economic activity. The balance you maintain practical focus with theological awareness serves well. Allows productive work. Allows meaningful work. Allows work that is both economically viable and spiritually enriched. The temple bell sounds. Time for evening offerings. Honey is among today's offerings. Honey you provided. Honey that will be presented to gods. Honey that connects your daily work to divine realm. Honey that embodies tears of Ra. Honey that participates in sacred patterns older than memory. Honey that is simultaneously food, offering, and theological substance. The bees hum in their hives. The sound is constant. Reliable. The hum of insects that originated as tears. That emerged from divine grief. That produce sacred substance. The hum continues. The work continues. The connection between mundane and sacred continues. One moment into the next. One day into another. The steady participation in patterns that transcend individual understanding but include individual effort. Offer, accept, continue. Offer, accept, continue. The rhythm that connects human effort to divine realm. The rhythm that sanctifies ordinary work. The rhythm that is participation in sacred patterns. The rhythm older than you. The rhythm that continues. The rhythm that is devotion expressed through practical labor. Through honey production. Through attention to bees born from tears of sun god. Through work that matters in ways both obvious and mysterious. Even with skill, you are stung sometimes. Not constantly. But enough that you know the feeling. A sudden hot needle in the skin. A swelling that tightens a finger. A pulsing ache that makes the day slightly harder. You don't dramatize it. You wash. You cool the area. You continue. Heat is constant too. Linen helps, but linen is not magic. So you drink water, you seek shade, you work early, you work slow. Your body is part of your equipment. You maintain it the way you maintain tools. Now return to the hive wall after sunset. The clay tubes hold the day's warmth. The air is cooler. The bees are quieter, still alive, but resting inside their dark. The hum is no longer a working drum. It is a distant blanket of sound. A softness behind the silence. You stand for a moment, breathing. No smoke now. No tools. Just presence. Imagine one jar on a low bench. Dark clay. Torchlight flicker. A reed held above it, letting the last line of honey fall. Drop. Pause. Drop. Not because you need to hurry. Because you don't. The jar receives the sweetness slowly, like it has all night. You wipe the rim. You set the plug. You press sealing clay gently. You smooth the surface until it is calm. And you stop. Because completion is part of rest. You step into the household. Linen shifts softly as you sit. A water jar cools your hands. Children sleep in stages. Your wife's breathing is already slow. You don't speak much. A day like this doesn't need more words. You wash the last honey from your fingers. You remove the last scent of smoke from your hairline. And the body recognizes a familiar permission. Work is finished. The Nile moves in the dark the way it always does. Not loud. Steady. The hives rest. The jars rest. The storehouse is closed. And the world's small threats, ants, thieves, heat are pushed back by night for a while. Let the last sounds be simple. A low hum remembered. A slow drip imagined. A river moving quietly far away. In. And out. Hum. And hush. Drop. And still. The day is complete. You have walked from hives to storage. From storage to home. From morning tasks to evening stillness. The bees are sealed for the night. The jars are counted. The tools are cleaned. The cycle has run its course. You sit outside your dwelling as light fades. The Nile moves past. Constant. Reliable. Same rhythm as yesterday. Same rhythm as tomorrow. The sound of water is soft. Not rushing. Just flowing. The way water has flowed for longer than anyone can remember. In the distance, the hives hum. Even from here, you can hear them faintly. Not urgent. Not distressed. Just the steady sound of colonies settling for night. Thousands of bees. Thousands of small lives. All contained within clay walls you shaped with your hands. All producing honey that serves purposes beyond your knowing. The hum is like breathing. In and out. Rise and fall. The collective sound of work becoming rest. Your own breathing matches it without effort. Slow. Steady. Calm. The air cools. The heat of day releases back to sky. Your body releases the tension of carrying jars. Of stacking. Of checking seals. Of walking miles between apiary and storage. Released. Your hands rest in your lap. Still honey stains slightly. The stains will fade by morning. Or they will not. It does not matter. The work will continue tomorrow. The same work. The patient work. The work that produces sweetness from flowers. From bees. From attention. Hum, flow, breathe. The river sounds continue. The hive sounds continue. Your breathing continues. All part of the same rhythm. The rhythm older than you. The rhythm that was here before you arrived. The rhythm that will continue after you rest. A jar sits sealed in storage. Virgin honey. Clear. Golden. Perfect. Tomorrow someone will open it. Will pour it for offerings. Will use it for healing. Will trade it for distant goods. But tonight, it simply sits. Sealed. Preserved. Waiting. Like you, waiting. Resting. Allowing the day to settle. The stars appear. Small lights. Constant. The bees cannot be heard now. Distance and darkness have quieted the sound. But you know they are there. Know the hum continues. Know the colonies are warm inside their clay homes. Know they rest as you rest. The work is complete. The honey is delivered. The seals hold. The system continues. And you can rest now. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts drift like smoke from the censer. Let the day's images fade, the hives, the jars, the walking, the pouring, all fading now. Just the sound of water. Just the coolness of evening air. Just the relief of stillness after movement. The bees are sleeping. The honey is sealed. The river flows. And you, drift now. Into the same darkness that covers the hives. Into the same stillness that fills sealed jars. Into the same peace that comes when work is done and tomorrow can wait. Hum, flow, fade. Sleep now. The honey is safe. The work continues tomorrow. But tonight, rest. Thanks for listening. You can sleep now. Good night.